Hi, Councillor Pinsno. Good, thanks. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the council meeting for Monday, October 30th. Before I pass it over to the clerk, I want to recognize someone in council chambers. And it was about a year ago, we got some very sad news that Councillor Harrigan had a diagnosis of cancer. And it's with my great pleasure that we welcome her back. And she's sitting in her chair now, so we just want to maybe recognize her.
Thank you so much, Mayor Caniff. I am glad to be back and happy to be here, and really excited now that all the meetings are going to be done by 8:15, so I can get to bed on time.
Yeah, you heard it here first. I'll pass it over to the clerk now to get things started.
Thank you, Mayor. Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. And now for the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we, as beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, I do not have a supplementary agenda this evening. However, I have two things to note. The first one is the DEIJ update, which is item 18A, will be moved until the next meeting of November 6th. And under non-agenda business items, we do need to have a conversation with council about the strong mayor powers. And so if we can get a 2/3 vote at that time to add to the agenda, we will have that discussion. Rules for the council chambers. Rules of decorum at council meetings. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issues in an atmosphere of inclusiveness, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements or hate speech, defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in the removal from the premise. The use of poster, signage, and literature is also prohibited. Pecuniary interest, we have 3 this evening so far. Item 16A, Imagine Chatham-Kent Proposal, Public Consultation, Councillor Allen. Item 16C, Motion of Councillor Doyle regarding incentive options for woodlot conservation, Councillor Wright. And 17A, Employment Service Delivery, Conflict of Interest by Councillor Brock McGregor. Is there any other conflict of interest this evening? Councillor Doyle?
I have one on 16A.
Thank you, and noted. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, with that, we're in the recognition phase, and I was here a few weeks ago, and we had a recognition ceremony from our friends in EMS, and we talked about a number of things that they did, and I thought there needs to be more people than the people in the room at the time to hear about it. So with great pleasure, I welcome up paramedics that are here, and I want to invite Chief Case up as well to introduce, and we just want to go through some of the things, the amazing things they do in the community. It's someone you never want to see out in the public because of what they're doing, but when you need them, they're angels. So I just want to pass over to you, Chief Case.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I call upon the EMS service officers present to come to the front and present themselves to council. Mr. Mayor, members of council, colleagues and the public, EMS are a shy bunch, as you can see, but they shouldn't be. There is no nobler cause than to save life, and our EMS teams, our paramedics, are on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Speaking as someone who's stood many times waiting for the paramedics to come, there's not many people that fire call 911 for, but the paramedics are one of them. Don't tell any firefighters I ever said that, by the way. It's only right and proper that they should be recognised. So I'm going to call upon my friend Peter Marasuti to come forward and acknowledge the presence of those who've been nominated this year. Peter.
Thank you. So on September 15th, we honored our paramedics for their hard work and dedication to this valley of Chatham-Kent. Many awards were given out, saves, live deliveries, commendations, exemplary bars of service years for 20, 30, 40 years plus, dedicated to the profession. We also dedicated our training room to our base hospital director at the back, Dr. Paul Bradford, who's a Chatham-ite and who keeps giving back to this community. So with that, I'd like to honor the paramedics in front of us, Mr. Mick McClare, Mike Stinson, Jim Sinclair, Troy Lavity, Nick Jovanovic, Kaylee McGinley, and Jill Hogue for their exemplary work over the years, and many of them received various awards that day. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. Council.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, we'll now move on to the deputations. This evening, Council, we have 4 deputations. The first one is not present. It was an email that was sent to you at noon today from Reg Deneur with regards to item 15B, the RFP award for contract R23-273, engineering services for Queens Line and Merlin Road Roundabout. The other 3 are present this evening. All 3 are on the item of 16A, Imagine Chatham-Kent Proposal Public Consultation. I'll remind each of the speakers that they have a maximum of 5 minutes, and the timer will be on the screen. We'll start with Larry Hutchins, and on deck is the Chatham-Kent Library Board. Larry, if you can just push your mic. Oh, it's on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Council. There are some points that I thought of after the consultation period was over that I just wanted to bring forward to you, hoping that it might help clarify what we're looking at moving forward on the Imagine CK project. First of all, building a new community hub is a legacy project. And legacy projects are something that are exciting in the formulative phase, but they're a lot of work, they're a lot of money, and they're also very messy. Something like the downtown hub would be something that would close down the intersection at King Street and at 5th, probably multiple times a day. And it would mess up traffic on King Street and on 5th Street, probably for several years until it's done. The current municipal center was once a legacy project by another council. And that council put a lot of thought into planting this building here. They moved out of the city center and they opened that space up to the private sector. And I believe that they wanted to move government out of business. And that's something that we should reflect on. And we should think of the people that put the work and the time into that legacy project. We should be thinking about people like Mayor Curtis Carter, councillors like Doug Arbour, Larry O'Rourke, Bill Erickson, and Mel Crew. They were all hardworking people, ordinary people like each and every one of you, who had a vision. And I don't think that vision's gone yet. I think that we can revitalize it and we can grow on it and we can leave a very large piece of prime real estate for the public sector. The other problem that we would have with putting a hub in the location that's projected is that there would be no more room for growth. We'd have nowhere to go. Here, we have space that we could still expand to. We have options available to us. And I do believe that those things need to be recognized. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is on behalf of the Chatham-Kent Library Board, and on deck is Rob Myers.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Caniff, members of council. I'm Robert Clark, the chair of the Library Board, and tonight you are making a decision that will impact Chatham-Kent for years to come. Since the main Chatham branch of the library is a significant part of item 16A on tonight's agenda, there are aspects of administration's conclusions with which the Library Board differs. It is our strong and carefully considered opinion that option 3, revitalizing both the Civic Center and the Chatham branch, will be the best choice for the following reasons. 1, there is a clear public preference for option 3. While the 1,100 or so responses to the ambiguous public survey and small public consultation were inconclusive, more than twice that number, over 2,300, responded to the library survey, with 83%, 5 out of 6 patrons, supporting option 3. Library patrons are found in 2 of 3 Chatham-Kent households and represent Chatham-Kent voters. More than 2,000 oppose the relocation to the old Sears building. Few are in favor. 2, as previously outlined, there are numerous weaknesses in the relocation concept, especially parking and related accessibility for parents with children, seniors, and those with mobility challenges. Moreover, the social hub component of the library service can be severely compromised. 3, there is still no visible plan for relocation to the old Sears building. There are more unknowns in this recommendation than in the original version. The devil is in the details, and few are provided. Moreover, there has been no consideration of the library's functional needs, nor of proper design and equipment. Never have the needs of the library and its patrons been considered. 4, the financial implications of the DCC relocation are not clear. Too many variables confusingly go in and out of the equation. Moreover, as there is no clear vision for the final outcome of the DCC concept, how can a realistic cost be calculated? Is this why public sector projects invariably have huge cost overruns? Is this a probable outcome for the DCC concept? Are the library's needs to be shortchanged? 5, there is apparent haste to make a decision for short-term gain that will result in long-term pain for the library and Chatham-Kent. Moreover, there is a perception that the library is merely a pawn in a larger game and that its needs and those of its patrons are subordinate to other less identifiable objectives. The Library Board's recommendation, if you cannot agree on option 3, is that 1, tonight you approve option 2, the full revitalization of the Civic Center. That is a primary need for our community. 2, the $6.5 million difference between options 2 and 5 be earmarked as a reserve for the eventual revitalization of the library branch in its current location. 3, as per the planning memorandum, you direct that administration further investigate options to expand the Chatham branch at its current location. A clear and informed study beginning with a careful and professional identification of the library's needs is essential. 4, following the study, a realistic development plan can be created. The Library Board can then establish a fundraising committee which will collaborate with the municipality in raising related public and private funding to complement municipal resources. If this takes 5 years, so be it. The current building has been serving the community for over 55 years. Modern progressive cities use their libraries and civic centers as iconic symbols of their identity. Many, including Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Ottawa, Halifax in recent years, have all created visionary statements about their communities with new and inspiring libraries. Numerous others project their identity with their city halls. Toronto's is memorably enigmatic. Chatham-Kent is fortunate to have the Civic Center and the library we now have. Keep them in their current location. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final deputation this evening is Rob Myers.
Good evening, all. If you don't know me, I'm Rob Myers. I was born and raised in Chatham-Kent and have always had interest in historical cars as well as historical buildings once I afforded to do this in Chatham. Over the last 25 years, I have done as my hobby buying and restoring historic buildings in this city. Especially downtown Chatham, I've created pieces like the Retro Suites, what is now one of the finest boutique hotels in Canada, according to TripAdvisor, along with creating available rental space for businesses in our downtown core that has supported a lot of small businesses over the years, and I'm very proud of this. I've traveled to a lot of cities throughout my business career, and I've seen a lot of very depressed downtown districts. Different areas throughout the world because of suburban sprawl, places like Walmart and things where people go outside of downtown districts. But I've also seen a lot of great historically restored cities, small cities, that have thrived, and in most of all cases, these cities have had great support from their city, along with individuals like myself and Ron Neidem, who's attending tonight, who have been inspired by rejuvenating old rundown buildings in the downtown district. 3 years ago, it's been 3 years, that I was asked many times, various people, council members, things like that, about buying the downtown mall. So we bought it. The owners that were the fourth owners failed in the downtown mall. It just doesn't work, these types of things. So we bought the mall, and along with Neidem, we've invested a lot of money in the mall. And during COVID, I met with most of you councilors about the possibility of doing the mall with City Hall, a new expanded library, a museum that I don't know who has all been to the current museum, but it's pretty small and pretty depressing. The people there work hard to try and attract people into the museum, but there's not much there to work with. But anyway, we've had this fresh vision of downtown to further attempt to bring life into this city in its downtown core, because downtown cores are important for cities like Chatham. Since our group purchased it 3 years ago, we've attempted to develop and produce plans and drawings and ideas that would work for a new library, expanded library. I've looked at the library, and the current library has unless you go up, there is no room for expansion. I happen to have a building I'm doing in Windsor that has a current library. So I know a little bit about them, and I'm happy to work with library people and museum people to develop something new that's great and try and bring new life into the downtown of the city. To this day, we've spent several $100,000 on all these development plans. We were going to build or discussed a new sports complex down there, a new city hall, a new library, a new museum. A couple months ago, I was reading the Chatham paper where it gave an update on the museum, and it said that there's no longer going to be a sports complex. That was news to me. First I had heard about it. Obviously, the city fathers have thought there's no funding available from the federal government at this time, so that's fine. Over the last 6 months, we discussed this again and again. A few months ago, I happened to read in the paper about this thing. I thought, oh, okay, news to me, but whatever. For some of you, it may be thought that our group is only trying to profit from this development. But I assure you that I'm not looking to profit out of this. I'm looking to vitalize downtown Chatham. Any profit that I was to make on this, I'd be happy to give back to the museum. It's not about money. It's about developing downtown. As you all know, and you're all proud of it, the Retro Suites is one of the highlights of the city. And I think this shopping center can do the same. But I'm kind of getting tired of it all. And we've had 3 years, haven't been able to lease any space. It's continually lost money because we can't give any tenants. We've lost some tenants, but the other tenants, we can't even give them new leases because we've been fooling around with this for 3 years. So it's time to decide. I understand what this gentleman says about the library. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's time to make a decision.
That's time, Mr. Myers. Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll move on to the consent agenda. The following items have been pulled from the consent agenda. Item 15B, RFP Award Contract R23-273 Engineering Services for Queens Line and Merlin Road Roundabout. Item 16A, Imagine Chatham-Kent Proposal Public Consultation. Item 16C, motion by Councillor Doyle, incentive options for woodlot conservation. Item 17A, employment service delivery. Item 18B, previous council action items. And item 20B, gravel road conversion prioritization framework. And 20D, native plant and tree nursery project update. Therefore, the following items remain on the consent agenda to be approved in one motion. Items 14A, 15A, C, D, 16B, 18C, 19A and B, and 20A, C, E, and F.
Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Allen, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
So move, Mayor Carniff.
Happy to second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Pinsno
Yes.
and Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. Moving on to tender awards. 15B, RFP award contract R23-273, engineering services for Queens Line and Merlin Road roundabout.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Anderson, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
Happy to put it on the floor, Mayor Caniff.
I'm happy to second, thank you.
Okay, Council, there's 4 people that want to speak to it. I'll go to Councillor Sakachi, then Anderson, then Harrigan, then Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and through you, Your Worship. The report here was obviously very, very detailed. I have had some conversations with our CFO and Mr. Quinton, as well as Mr. Soldo. There was a lot of misinterpretation regarding the cost associated with the project, and I was just hoping that Edward, if you could by chance just clarify a little bit. In the report, it's estimated that it says it's to be about $4.6 million, which is almost double the cost associated with the original proposal. But I do note that it seems to be that there's 2 costs from 2 different projects in the report. Can you just explain that a little bit, if you don't mind, Edward?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. First and foremost, I'm going to point out that this report is actually to hire a consultant to undertake engineering design, and they'd be undertaking engineering design for 2 separate projects. I'm going to ask our Director of Engineering, Marissa Mascara, to come up and provide a little more clarity on that, and she has a couple of slides as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, to answer your question, Councillor, the construction cost estimate in the report is $4.6 million. That includes 2 scopes of work. So there is bridge rehabilitation work required on the structure that's on the west leg of the intersection. That's estimated about $2 million. The balance of that $2.6 million is the roundabout, civil works, and contingency for the project.
And in speaking with Meredith as well, she did indicate that there would be she could present a couple slides. Is it possible for you just so the public can see the actual scope of the work that needs to be done in a separate component?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, if everyone can see on the slide right now, so this is the roundabout configuration that the cost estimate was developed for. And so you can see on the west side at the bottom of the screen is where the bridge work is, which is in the limits of the overall intersection improvements. And then if I just move to the next slide. So this was the traffic signals configuration that was also studied in 2021. And as you can see, the bridge scope of work is required in either iteration.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to reiterate one more time, if council at previous direction would have provided you, the tender to do, let's say, the stoplight and the expansion of that and the road alignment, we would still then have to take care of the additional challenges that you've identified on this bridge. So that cost would be associated with both ways that we would have went, just so the public is aware that it's not this $4.6 million on just the roundabout, that if we would have went the other way, the other direction, we still would be having to address the deficiencies on this bridge as well, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So the bridge rehabilitation work was identified through a condition assessment last year. It identified several scopes, which I think are talked about in the report. That work is recommended within a 3 to 4 year time frame. It needs to be completed as part of the intersection work because it is within the overall limits of the construction at the intersection. We also need to complete this work in 2024 before the MTO's work that they're planning at the Bloomfield Road interchange in order that this intersection can be ready to receive kind of that additional traffic detouring as part of that work.
And if this wasn't approved tonight and the ministry went through with that other project and this project wasn't complete, how many challenges would that cause the municipality having potentially two large intersections like that out for a long period of time?
Thank you through the mayor to the councillor. This is one of the primary detour routes for that interchange. I would say that, we do have a safety issue at this intersection now, and putting in that, or diverting that much more traffic through here will just increase the risk that we would face at this intersection. So it really is imperative we get ahead of the MTO in terms of dealing with that existing problem we have at the intersection.
And my last question to you, Mr. Soldo, is because I'm aware that we've had a new set of eyes on this with both of you, which I greatly appreciate. I've had the opportunity to speak with you on both this. Do you still feel from your professional perspective that this is the most efficient and safest and cost-effective way to proceed with this project?
Simple answer is yes.
Thank you very much. In respect of time, that's all my questions and concerns. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anderson, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Scotchy asked and Marissa answered all my questions, so thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Story.
Thank you. Through the mayor, the one question that I have that remains unanswered is around, I'll just say the process of design. When we were discussing the options earlier, something that was very clear from constituent feedback was the importance of agricultural vehicles being able to use the roundabout, especially when they are traveling on Merlin Town Line going north to south. I can trust that all of that feedback that was provided, a couple of years ago will still be kind of remaining front and center around the design going forward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. All of that feedback is incorporated and those vehicles are incorporated into the design that we're carrying forward. We are also planning to do some public education on this roundabout before, and just as we start to get into construction before we've opened it, just to kind of refresh everybody on how they work and that we have incorporated for all of these vehicles that may travel through that intersection.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much for responding to Councillor Sakashi's questions. They really do clarify some of the concerns the community had around costing.
Councillor Story, followed by Councillor Jubenville.
My questions were answered. Thank you.
Councillor Jubenville, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor. Most of my questions were answered. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Marissa. And this might have been answered a couple years ago, but my memory's not that good. So during this work, and I'm just going to say, assuming that this is all passed and goes forward, will the road ever actually be fully shut down during construction, or will there be the ability for vehicles to get through? And I only ask that because that road is extremely busy between there and getting through to Tilbury and such. So I'm just, I guess, more out of curiosity, but there's not a lot of good ways to detour around this.
Thank you through the mayor to the councillor. Each roundabout's unique in its design and its constructability. Having built a number of them over the years, you try to keep it open as much as you possibly can, but there will always be some time frames where you might have a day or two or sometimes up to 5 days where while you're doing that transition in construction, you may need to shut it down. So the goal really there is then to do that in a manner that is least disruptive to the traffic that's there and give plenty of notice and detouring for the commuters that are going through that area. So to say that we wouldn't shut down both of those intersections, I think it's a bit premature at this point because we still got to go through the design. But there's always that transitioning period where you do need to have some sort of closure in place.
Thank you then, and I appreciate that because I know it may, and especially getting ahead of the Bloomfield Road issue because they're probably, that would be used as a detour, I'm sure, to get around through to Tilbury and such, so, thank you.
Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the only thing I've had from people ask me is just the price difference between this and what lights would have been. Do we have a cost figure for what the lights would have been? I know before this price increase, they were more expensive than the roundabout. I'm just wondering where they fall in line now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we don't have an updated cost estimate, but I can speak to what was considered in 2021 when we were looking at all those options. So in the existing configuration where we might typically think about installing traffic signals right there, we identified that we have some geometric constraints and some sightline deficiencies. So to work with what's there would actually require reconstructing the existing bridge and widening it, which is an extensive cost. So that's where they looked at an alternative of traffic signals that requires realigning that intersection further to the east, if we can see on the screen here. And so that's an extensive amount of earthwork. So this configuration was estimated at $2.9 million, whereas the roundabout was estimated at $2.1 million. And both of these, again, require bridge work in either instance.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other question, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Canada. If this fails tonight, what happens? Just nothing?
If council chooses, through the mayor to the councillor, if council chooses not to proceed with this design, we would not be building anything at this location, neither signal nor a roundabout, and we would have to live with the existing safety concerns that are there.
Oh, okay. And just one other quick question. And it might be in the report, like I read it, but I didn't catch it. Did we purchase land already? Or expropriate or whatever?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we have purchased the lands. There was a process, and we have the property that's been identified with the roundabout.
And how much was that land? Do you know offhand? And why did we buy it before it was approved that we would go ahead with? Like, is there...
Maybe to answer the second, through the mayor to the councillor, council approved the environmental assessment, and through the environmental assessment, you authorized us to proceed with this option. As part of that, we go out and purchase the property to prepare for the construction of the project.
I was just asked the question of if we did buy the land, why did we purchase it before the approval to this? But some of council did, so that's the process.
Maybe just to clarify, council approved the environmental assessment, so you have approved this concept.
Sorry?
Council approved the environmental assessment, which identified the roundabout as the preferred option here.
So why are we here?
So we're here for council to approve the retention of a consultant to do the detailed design.
Okay, this is sort of getting to where I want to get to, because I've had 2 phone calls, so not tons, but and people have called and said, so this is a done deal. And I said, well, I don't know. It's coming to council for approval, so I don't know. I'm a little confused. Is this a done deal? Like,
Gord?
I think I might help answer that. Council also has their approved purchasing policy that says anything over $250,000 has to come back to council. And by the way, you've asked us to review that purchasing policy, and it will be coming back to a meeting shortly. But this is one of the problems of low limits on our purchasing policy. You're getting these reports over and over and over again to basically debate the same issue. And, you know, so the reason why this report's here is simply because it's over $250,000. If that wasn't your purchasing policy limit, if it was $500,000, staff would have just
this wouldn't even have come here.
Right, because you've already approved the project.
Okay, well, that kind of clears it up. Okay, thanks, Gord.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
And Councillor Pinsnow?
Nope.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-4.
Item 16, development services.
16A, Imagine Chatham-Kent Proposal, Public Consultation.
Councillor Finn.
I'd like to move that motion with a friendly amendment.
It's your motion, so
Okay.
is it A or B, or is it
I didn't know
item
if we had to
3?
have a seconder first or not.
Is it item 3 or item 4?
Oh,
4, 3, 4?
it would be number 5, I guess, that it's already typed in.
4.
Oh. Yes, I was just reading that the library be granted.
Okay, but you wanted to change something before I find a seconder? You wanted to add something to
No.
this?
It's already typed in there, under number
Okay.
5.
All right. Councillor B. McGregor, second it. All right, so Councillor Finn, then Councillor McGregor, and then I've got Councillor Story to speak after that.
First, I'd like to thank Bruce and his team for putting the reports together in this matter, as it's been definitely a very long process. Thank you to everyone who took the time to answer the surveys, attend the public meetings, called or emailed me over the last 3 years. As a library board member last term, when this project came forward, we looked at all sides of it, and it was stated that we would need 35,000 square feet. When it came back to us 3 years later, the drawings that were given to us were just concept drawings, to our understanding, but with 3 entities on the main floor, the project just seemed flawed. It's now been brought back up to us, again, with 35,000 square feet, which is what originally last term's library board agreed to was needed. I believe that both the museum and the library will have much needed increase in space to allow both places to be an attraction and well-used facility for many years to come. Not saying that they aren't already, but I'm sure that both the museum, curator, and the chief librarian would welcome an increase in space for programming and displays. I believe that they could, in working with architects, builders, etc., make this a space that all of Chatham-Kent would be proud of, as they are both much needed and used by residents. Looking at the other options of renovating the Civic Center and renovating the Civic Center and the life cycle expenses of the museum and library, and with expansions to these areas at a very later date, I believe it makes sense to make the move to the downtown center and save taxpayers' money, as there would be savings. The Civic Center and library sales could offset costs, or could be put towards the cost of building a much-needed fire hall in the city of Chatham on the right side of the tracks. I would like to ask that both, it's already been added about the curator and the chief librarian. So in closing, I believe that this is not just a benefit to Chatham, but to all residents of Chatham-Kent, and much needed.
Councillor B. McGregor, and then Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Certainly appreciate Councillor Finn making this motion, and I think it's a really great opportunity for the municipality to address needs in our community. And I think when we've had these discussions over the past 3 years, in a way it's become complicated when we're talking about differing proposals and the input from various stakeholders, and I think that's part of these processes. It's part of large builds, it's part of legacy projects, it's part of renewals in downtowns and renewals with municipal infrastructure. So while that process can be frustrating and cause tension at times, I think it's worthwhile, and I believe we're at a proposal that makes a lot of sense for this community. And I think it's really important to understand the current needs in the community, and that this isn't a project that is just something nice to do and an extra for the community. It's actually addressing some really real and long-term challenges that we've been facing. So when you think about the inadequacies in this building that are now very well documented in this report, when we think about the challenges that we all know we face at the library and the museum, despite what is phenomenal programming. I'm a common patron of both those areas with young children. The teams there do really fantastic work, but they are constrained in programming space, and with our community growth and with the change in the way services are delivered, we need expanded spaces. And it's very clear that this is the most
financially prudent way to do this. It addresses some big needs with what is an acceptable financial commitment. So when I sort of step back and look at what the decision really means, we know that we don't have a choice with this building anymore to do nothing. We know that sooner or later something's going to trigger us needing to do something, and the cost of that renovation for just this space is $37 million. And our alternative choice is to move to Sears, to that area, and for an extra net $6 million, we're getting a 35,000 square foot library space, a brand new museum. And we know that to do all those three spaces in their current locations would be prohibitively expensive. We know that we heard from one of the library board members that preferred option 3. That is one of the options that hasn't been recommended for that reason. We know that our financial ability to renovate all those spaces in their current locations, it's not there. It's not there with the challenges that we're facing. So I did have a few questions, and I wanted to just maybe highlight a couple aspects of the report. So one of the approaches, not recommended, of course, was the do-nothing approach, and I think that it's important to highlight why that wasn't recommended, the current challenges we're facing in this building, and what that do-nothing approach could potentially cost us in the future and where the challenges are. So I think that question's possibly to Bruce or Edward, or maybe both.
Thank you to the Mayor, to the Councillor. Probably will work together on this question. We did have a building condition assessment that was completed as part of this. I believe the appendix includes the summary of needs. There is a number of existing life cycle needs that have been identified for immediate work, and that's something that we're developing a action plan on. Regardless of council's decision, we're going to need to actually address those issues as they are existing. In terms of the overall summary for this building here, when you look at the summary that's provided in the appendix, I would say that the majority of the systems within the facility itself are in poor condition. There has been some improvements recently done, say to some of the windows, which are identified as good, but the majority of systems here are in poor. The building itself is, the number of the systems in the building itself are also a challenge in terms of how do you upgrade them. To do the HVAC or to do the electrical, if that was the will of council to do one of those systems, you really can't do them in isolation. Everything's behind walls, everything is interconnected. So to move forward with even minor repairs, you start to get into a larger project here, and that will just snowball into a complete reconstruction of the building itself. So it's quite challenging. I believe the report speaks on its own in terms of the condition. And currently, as council is aware, we did have that pipe break. That was a couple months ago. We'll be coming back to a report in terms of our costs. But I can't guarantee that that's not going to occur today or tomorrow because the condition is pretty poor, and unfortunately, it's not something that we can anticipate given the age of the various systems that we have.
Thank you. And one of the options that was not recommended that was kicked around was renovating this space, renovating the library, renovating the museum, and meeting some of those needs. And that price tag was, I think, pegged at 65 to 70 million. Can we talk about what that would involve?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, under that scenario, it was essentially expanding each facility or renovating the Civic Center to start with. So right off the top, we know that's 37 million to do this building. I'll acknowledge that the other two expansions are their estimates based on a cost per square footage of what we're seeing anywhere, minimum $500 per square foot upwards to 800. So it's a range based on another 10,000 square feet of library and between potentially 20,000 to 30,000 square if you're going to do a museum renovation. So that's why it's a range, but it's we know the 37 is pretty solid based on the latest report, but the others is a range. Mm-hmm.
Great. Mm-hmm. And the option that we're talking about here that's moved in the motion to move to the Sears location and the co-location, can we kind of summarize what needs that's meeting with respect to museum expansion, with respect to library expansion? I know it now states pretty equivocally in the motion we're looking at 35,000 35,000 square feet for a library. But what types of challenges have we seen at those other facilities that that could be improved in this move? Understanding they're in the report, but I think it's important to highlight those when we're having the discussion.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. So right now, as the Sears building sits, there's a little over 100,000 square feet between the two floors to work with, right? So in sum total right now, with this space, the library, and the cultural center, save and except the Kiwanis Theater, so the museum, you know, the other shared rooms in the art gallery total about 85,000 square feet. So there's already 15,000 more square feet. There is the potential even to add on to the front. That was kind of envisioned that, you know, your new council chambers could be right out front of the building, so additional space there, shared room. All this has to be, you know, defined or redefined during an actual detailed design phase and see what options are there for shared space, those types of things. But the reality is, I think there's plenty of room to do the 35,000 square foot library. It's a, you know, significant size museum. We don't believe right now that we need, as administration, I say we, the 43,500 square feet. I think there's lots of opportunities, more efficient design, more modern office design, shared spacing, you know, shared services, shared operational aspects, and obviously the council chambers would be a, you know, it's a great opportunity for a great flex space there that's used on a consistent basis versus kind of a stagnant council chambers we have now. So.
Yeah, and I think that's important to highlight that this is an improvement and an opportunity to improve service in general. From a project's perspective, I know that often we'll hear, whenever we're dealing with any project, is, you know, there's not enough specifics, there's not detailed drawings, but when we're working on things of this magnitude, is this the common approach that's taken, where we are approving a concept and those initial estimations, and then the expensive work that goes into those detailed processes happens afterwards? So I know that we haven't built a lot in this community in the past little bit, so maybe our last experience is the animal shelter, but I recall this being a very similar type of experience and some similar concerns brought up in discussing how that process works.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and maybe just to back up a step. So we did have the discussions or consulted on the 5 different options that we've talked about. I think there's been, you know, a lot of administrative input to this report. It's not just myself doing this report. So we've had a lot of discussion about this. And we felt that, you know, the recommendation is, and it's kind of fundamental, that, you know, if council wants to, you know, maintain its existing level of service, then, you know, option 2, renovate this building, makes a lot of sense, and, you know, maybe consider life cycle improvements to the other 2 facilities. If you do want to, you know, the opportunity to expand your cultural assets and library, then you maybe we should look at the option of, you know, further exploring option 5. To answer your question, the reality is, until you kind of make that decision, the next step really is you need to get into a detailed design process, and that will flesh out an RFP, you know, an eventual tender. At that point in time, council will have the, you know, the opportunity to revisit this again based on the actual, you know, costs of what this will actually be. So.
Great, I think that's helpful, and you know, it is an exciting opportunity, and I think that you know, as the report states pretty clearly, that we're in a position where we have to make a decision. I have not felt haste in making a decision at any point in this process. I think that this is an expectation of how you have to go through major decisions like this, and I do think that when we think about the growth in our community, when we think about the importance of cultural institutions, the importance of library services, the importance of the museum, and the opportunity we have to improve those services at what, you know, is a net difference of a roundabout and a half, makes some real sense. So it's a very small investment when we consider some of the other investments we make in this community to really have some lasting impact and to really impact how people access and use services in the community. So I'm happy to see this come forward tonight. I'll be happy to support it and looking forward to this development in the community.
Councillor Story, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I have a couple of questions and a few comments, probably mostly to Bruce, on the hot seat tonight. Did anyone from the museum, gallery, or library approach you or administration when we heard that the Sears building was for sale?
Thank you, your worship. Sorry, myself personally, did they approach us or us, the municipality?
Well, your department or the,
No, no, nobody's approached us directly, no.
okay. Because that is a bit confusing to me, but I just wanted to see sort of the order of this happening, because I feel like we're right now at the point where we have even less detail 3 years in than we did when we started, at least this term. I'm looking at your report, and I want to thank you and your team for that. I want to commend you for this. There's been a ton of work here, and I really appreciate it. And I know Dave and his team put a lot of work into this report over the years as well. So thank you for that, and I completely agree with all the comments so far that a decision is important tonight. And I want to respect all of that input, and I want to thank all the deputations. I want to thank Mr. Myers for his investment and his team in our community. It's very much appreciated, and you've done an incredible job with your facility. So certainly none of my comments would contradict that. But to the report, it says here that, correct me if I'm wrong, $8 to $10 million to upgrade the library at its current site. I think there's a few different numbers going around, and I'm not sure if maybe I missed them in the report or maybe I'm reading a different section, but I saw 8 to 10 million for the library and 30 to 35 for civic, which would basically ensure that they were operational for another minimum of 40 years. Is that correct?
Thank you, your worship. So in the past report, we had an estimate to renovate the Civic Center at 30 to 35 million. Since that time, we've had the updated building condition assessment, and I think it's reflected in here it would now be 37 million. So we have it more accurate. I mean, it's pretty close at the 30 to 35, but the latest report is suggesting it'd be 37 for that. In the library, yes, it was to expand the library to its current location. There's a range there because there hasn't been any real detailed assessment. It's really, okay, what's the cost to build a 10,000 square foot? You might need land, you might need design, 8 to 10 million on that as well.
Right. Have we done that for the Sears site?
The Sears site, actually, the cost estimate you see in there for the 53 million is a fairly good cost estimate in that it was based on the original design that was proposed. So Mr. Myers' group actually had another firm submit an actual quote, which we used to then get a third-party review when we were doing our due diligence, and they were within range of 10 to 15%. It was a year later, actually, so just the inflationary costs. So with contingencies, that was to actually build what was proposed before. Now, it would be a clean slate again, but I think there's probably the potential for some additional cost savings because that proposal had an open promenade, meaning you'd have to do the whole west wall, where now you would not, right? That type of thing, so.
So we don't have a cost for the Sears building?
We do. It's still based on that original of 53 million. That's all in. But what I'm saying is there's a potential even for further cost savings if once we get through the design. But we won't have, as I mentioned earlier, there will not be a firm number unless you go through a more formal, detailed design process. That's just the reality. So.
Right. And we have a more detailed number for Civic that we own.
Correct.
Which we could ostensibly begin relatively soon versus the Sears building, which we currently do not own, that we will need to renovate.
What I should say about that, and Edward can step in here if he wants to add in, but we have a number from a building condition assessment. Again, it's an estimate. You still have to go through detailed design, tender. It could come in higher, it could come in lower. It's essentially where we're at with the Sears too. We have a pretty solid number based on a previous design, but once you get the new design and tender it, you won't know until you do either one.
Right.
Thank you to the mayor, to the councillor. Just to add in either case, you have to go through detailed design. The building condition assessment is just that. It's a like for like with some allocation for moving the chambers and all that. And to get the level of detail where we have a firm estimate, we're talking about anywhere from $2 to $4 million of design money for each one.
Is that included in that, the numbers we have?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're already, those are the numbers we've already got. So we're voting on a 57 plus inflationary cost design that the stakeholders already said was not functional for them. The current library board, represented by Mr. Clark tonight, shared their feedback that this was not their preferred model. So I'm a little concerned about whose needs we're prioritizing in this project. The consultant that was hired did make it clear that they had not done any previous work in library design, museum design, or gallery design. So that does raise some concerns for me, because we are still basing some of our decisions on work that group has not performed before. And I fully agree with Councilor McGregor, these are critical buildings that I think need to be treated, you know, that are important to our community and really contribute to our economy, to our society, and are really important to overall community health. But we're not seeing the information I think that I'm comfortable seeing yet. So I'm curious as to why we wouldn't necessarily, for example, to use a library board, and the overwhelming response in favor by library users. Why did we not recommend option 3, Bruce?
In terms of option 3, I think we just felt that the level of costs, and the reality is we've had no direction from council again into that level of service, right, in terms of expanding the library. Why it was approved in a master plan, council's never approved a 10,000 square foot addition at the library or an addition to the cultural center at this point in time. So that's just based on the level of costs from there. That's why we've recommended the 2 options to proceed down that path.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. If we do move into Sears, what will our options be for expanding there, since we won't own the land or the building adjacent to it?
What are our options to expanding there? Well, you'd have to acquire additional property, obviously, if you wanted to expand outward. Is there potential to expand upward? Potentially. You know, these are things that could be looked at through detailed design if we felt we needed to, you know, to look at the option to expand. Is there an option? You could even do that during your detailed design, just as a, you know, a future build to see if there's an option to design it or construct it so it could be expanded upon. But really, that's the reality. Without acquisition of property, you're kind of stuck with that footprint for sure.
Okay, because I just come back to why we couldn't, we're considering doing these different renovations, improvements to the Sears building, which we do not currently own on property, on land we don't own, adjacent to a building we don't own. Why wouldn't we be willing to consider that same approach to our current buildings that we do? And we can, this building was actually designed to add stories onto. As you'll see by the stairwell around the corner of the building, that was actually designed higher to expand if ever needed, to add additional stories. I know there has been discussion at the library of potentially doing the same. There is property we could acquire at the cultural center. Having worked there for many years, I'm well familiar with that facility. I'm just curious as to why we're not considering the same approach to the buildings that we own, that the taxpayers, this community already owns, and are investing in, to the buildings that we don't, a building that we don't own yet. So that, I just want to put that out there. I appreciate all that information. Thanks, Bruce. I just have a few more comments and then I'll move on. I thank you, Mr. Chair. I just also wanted to mention that obviously I do have a link to this building. My grandfather designed it. Ironically, I think it's kind of interesting with the leadership of the mayor of that time, which is Doug Allen, who's the grandfather of another councillor. So we've got an interesting multi-generational thing going on here. And Do I think that's an interesting and unique connection? Absolutely. I would never deny that. And am I proud of that? Of course I am. I'm really grateful for that. I don't think anyone wouldn't be if it was a family connection. He's an award-winning, nationally recognized professional who could have brought his talents anywhere but decided to come back to Chatham-Kent. And almost every community in CK has at least one building designed by him or his office. But all of that said, full disclosure, if moving the Civic Center was needed and justified, if it was responsible and financially sound, and we had a solid argument and a business or a building assessment, which we do have, I would support moving Civic Center in a minute if it was a reasonable decision, despite my own personal connection to the building. I would never put that ahead of a financially responsible decision in my role as councillor. But based on 3 years later, I wasn't on for the previous two, but with the limited information in this report, considering the magnitude of the price it's going to move, 53 million, which was a year ago, with inflationary costs, versus costs right now, based on what we've just discussed, are less than half to fix what we do have. And buildings that we own, I can't support that. And I do agree it's time to move on. I agree that the private investors group has every right to move on with the plans for your site, like any other private developer would across Chatham-Kent, and I appreciate your investment in our downtown, 100%. I also want to thank, because they aren't all here tonight, but the staff and volunteers on the Chatham-Kent Library Board, the staff and volunteers of the Thames Art Gallery Advisory Committee, the Chatham-Kent Museum Advisory Committee, and the volunteers of the Chatham-Kent Arts and Culture Network, who all devoted a lot of time and effort into this work, and unfortunately, we did not incorporate that in this work. So I want to say thank you to all of you in these stakeholder groups across Chatham-Kent, despite the fact we did not provide you with any concrete information, despite the fact we did not provide you with accurate floor plans or architectural drawings, despite the fact we did not bring consultants to the table with library, museum, or art gallery experience, despite the fact we did not consult you about survey questions and in some cases did not accurately reflect your needs, despite the fact we did not even include the museum and gallery feedback in the last report, even though you provided it, and despite the fact that you continue to invest your time and effort over the past year, and in some cases longer, to try and impress upon all of us the important needs of your facilities and users. So I thank you for that. I would just wrap up by saying, if all of us who believe so much in the importance of the museum and gallery and library, which I thank you for everyone who believes in those facilities, because I do too, if we believe they deserve that investment, I don't understand how moving 2 blocks for this building, moving 2 blocks for the library, and moving just across the park, the same reasoning wouldn't apply to our current sites. If you support library, art gallery, museum needs only when it involves selling off public assets to private developers, but you won't support it now when they're in buildings owned by us, the taxpayers, the community of Chatham-Kent, it raises the genuine question as to whose needs are we really taking into consideration during this entire process. I would love to see on that site, for example, housing, mixed use, attainable, well-designed housing. We've learned in a recent report that centralized housing waiting list is the largest it's ever been. I want to speak briefly about the...
Sorry, just, we got 5, I've given you the...
okay, thank you.
So if you can kind of wrap it up?
Thank you, I apologize.
Okay.
It's a big issue, I really apologize. I thank you for your courtesy. I don't think to characterize the public feedback is inconclusive. It was extremely clear that the large variety of users did not support this recommendation. So the bottom line is the Civic Center is a purpose-built, architecturally significant building that was designed by an award-winning Chatham architect. It has been ignored and patched up for too long. We have a building right here we can be proud of, one that our community deserves, and one that was built with all of us, the taxpayers and citizens of this community, in mind. And I don't think we can afford to avoid that any longer. Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I really want to start by thanking the individuals who gave deputations tonight. This is my first meeting back in a while, and certainly it's a big topic to discuss. One of the deputations we heard was from the library board chair, and I know that there are a number of council members who also sit on our library board, like other committees of council. And, even sometimes boards can't be unified in the decisions that they make and the conversations that they have. And I think Councillor Finn kind of spoke a little bit about that in her introductory comments. The questions that I have really are related to item number 5 and around how this planning phase through the mayor to Bruce really would pull in some of the feedback around the needs of the curator or the chief librarian, and what sort of team would be made on the municipal side if this building was purchased and then does become a public municipal building. So what does planning look like to get us from where we are today and what we see to that detailed design?
So thank you, Your Worship. I think the next step is obviously to engage in an RFP for design services and stipulate what are the requirements and the scope of inclusion in that. I.e. recommendation number 5 here tonight for sure. I think, going into this, we acknowledge that we'd want somebody with professional library experience as part of that, design team, right? Or at least contributing to that design team. Same if this is going to be a museum as well, potentially, right? We'd want somebody with those skill sets as well, so.
Great, thank you. And I'm certainly not a self-proclaimed librarian expert, although I do pay fees regularly because I'm always late on my book returns. So I actually took a look at the strategic plan for the library to help me make my decision this evening. And one of the key items that is on the website with the library strat plan is to offer access by creating both an entry point to innovative learning technologies and physical spaces open to all. And I wanted to point out that this 35,000 square feet is a huge amount of space that could provide really amazing accessible space for patrons of the library. And I wanted to also add that the location of the building that we're considering does have ample parking. I usually feel like I've won a bit of a lottery if I can park behind the library in the current parking spaces that are offered, because they are very, very limited. And so I think we need to be thinking about some of that accessibility and access. I'm sure the staff will as they design it, but when we're looking at the decisions that we have to make, looking at the library's own strategic plan is helpful in understanding kind of how looking at the options proposed and how certainly the new location for the Civic Center could meet that need. I did have another follow-up question, but I may have forgotten it in my current speaking notes, and I figured this would happen. So I will maybe just wrap up by saying that, there's certainly a lot of, there's a lot of detail that is missing, but in the same way that we just discussed with infrastructure and engineering in the Merlin Town Roundabout, we first need to approve the concept and the big picture of where do we want to go. Then we will then move into other phases that will show us some very detailed designs and drawings about where we are going and what the end result is going to be. And I remember my final question, so I'll take it now, Mayor Caniff, if that's okay. Through you to Bruce or Edward, there was comment made about the current existing municipal assets that we've had, and potentially we could sell them or repurpose them. What sort of purpose could a building like the Civic Center, based on its location and where it is in downtown Chatham, what could it become in a reasonable way?
Thank you, Your Worship. Realistically, I think there's certainly an opportunity for housing. It could be even mixed use, right? Combining commercial. It's a common thing to have commercial elements and residential as well. Again, it's one of those things you'd almost have to do another feasibility study. If somebody wanted to buy it, they'd want to ensure, okay, what are the bones of the structure? Does it work for that type of a use? But that's certainly, I think, the obvious thing that comes to mind for both of these. So, even the appraisals that we had done in these, the highest and best use that they evaluated it on in terms of market was for either residential or mixed use type of a use or repurposing. So,
Great, thank you. So, so thinking about that, it really does offer a nice bookend for King Street and downtown Chatham. And I'm not a resident of downtown Chatham, but I do frequent here often enough, and I think that that's important to think of too, the downtown core, and how this offers that potential for some great development on the Sears side of what is King Street, and also some great development for what is currently the Civic Center side on King Street. So I will be supporting the recommendations with the new location tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Crew, followed by Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm not going to talk about numbers or anything. Everybody else has done a great job about that. It's a no-brainer to me when I looked at the check sheet that Bruce did. Thank you for that. Simplified things. Sometimes these reports I can get lost in, so I really appreciate that part. Recently, some councilors and myself have been to the boardwalk meeting with the downtown Chatham citizens, where they've raised some concerns. One of the statements that at the first meeting and maybe the second meeting was, you need to start investing in our downtown. Chatham matters. And, you know, they were angry, and they're angry about conditions. They're angry about, you know, what's going to happen if this mall is just left there. And what if? So you need to think about that part. It's not a good thought. By moving something positive in that downtown area, we are going to, and I think most of you know about STEP-TED principles, crime prevention through environmental design. So that's natural surveillance, putting people down there, natural movement, keeping eyes on streets, and you know, it just reduces crime, makes things more safer, and that's what people in our that are living in our downtown area want. We have a lot of tenants living in our downtown area now. We have the boardwalk, we have some revitalized apartments, some of those old buildings that Rob loves to remodel. Some people are doing it and making some beautiful apartments in our downtown area. But we need to make sure that we, as a community, are investing as well in that downtown area to make it safe, make it vital, and make it vibrant. And those are the things that build downtown cores, and it's people that we are so lucky to have people like our investors, Mr. Myers and Mr. Natum and their families and all of their partners that want to invest in our community. I remember I worked at the Merle Hotel, and so I know what it was like, and I know what it's like now as a place where people from around the world come to Chatham to go into Mr. Myers' family's establishment. And what kind of pride do we have when we open up a book and say, yeah, that's where we live. And it's a block away from my house. I'm pretty proud of that. I think that, you know, we need to trust in our investors, trust in ourselves, and invest in our people. Our people that work for Chatham-Kent deserve this opportunity to work in a beautiful place and to have that opportunity to change our downtown. It's nice that, you know, I love this vision. And I really hope people will invest in our downtown. I know people feel that the Civic Center is downtown, and I love the Civic Center because of the historic value that it has. So, you know, perhaps there's some historic, you know, I think of the old OPP station that was turned into apartments. You know, this could be a beautiful seniors apartment building if we move. You know, I'd like to be a senior looking out over the river. I don't fish or anything, but, you know, it'd be nice. But I think these opportunities are here. And even, you know, the library, that could be I don't know, a visionary thing like affordable housing, something like that, you know. But these opportunities are here at our doorstep. Our people who are invested in and have a vision for our community, and for people like this group of investors who are not from out of town, they're from here and they care. And I think that we need to show our people in Chatham-Kent that we care. So that's all I think I have to say. I'm just trying to see if I have other words. I remember sitting when I first sat here in this seat, 2006. It cost maybe a couple $1 million, which was a crazy amount of money to fix the HVAC system. Now I think it's like 20 million, something like that. It's like, should have fixed it the first time. Now you can't even fix it. So you got to buy a whole new one. So I think that it's time. Take this opportunity and let's invest in our community. Let's invest in downtown Chatham, where the citizens who are moving there, we want to keep them there. So I think I'm done. I'm rambling now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your indulgence. I am supporting option number 5.
Councillor Wright, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Was the library board or the museum board presented this before now, or is it just coming now? Or
Thank you, Your Worship. There's been lots of reports along the way that have been out there, but council's getting this report tonight for the first time, and these 2 recommendations. Michael looks like he wants to add into this.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. If the question is whether the library board is seeing this resolution for the first time, the answer is yes, they are. In fact, some of us are. But when we had the stakeholder sessions that council asked us to have, there were 5 options put in front of the library, not just the library board, everybody who participated in those stakeholder sessions. So this option was definitely one of them. So there has been ample presentation of some of the pros and cons and the expected cost and things like that associated with each of the options, including the potential acquisition of the Sears site.
being on the museum board, it would have been nice to know this before tonight to help make a decision. The first round, we turned it down because it wasn't feasible. There wasn't enough room. And now it's coming back here, and I know the museum board, they don't know nothing about it until now.
Well, like I said, the 2 public consultations that took place at the John Bradley Center, those were made, actually they're specifically, the first one was specifically designed for the arts and culture community. So I know that the museum was made aware of it. I'm not sure Bruce can help if we had any sort of representatives specifically from the museum. I can't recall. But they were made aware of it. In fact, we sort of billed one of them specifically for the cultural community, hoping that that would be a venue for them to speak at. And there were some folks representing the arts and cultural community. Definitely the library was well represented at that meeting as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm going to follow kind of what Councillor Crew was saying. I think this is really a moment where, like, our downtown is kind of, it's a life and death decision here. Parts of downtown have been, frankly, it seems like on life support for a long time. And these guys have really done a lot to fix up a lot of it, but we've got a problem, and it's the mall. And we now have an opportunity to breathe some very imaginative life into the old mall. And hopefully that's what we'll refer to it as one day, is the old mall. So I really think the opportunity, beyond, the arguments for and against moving these facilities to Sears, like that aside, those arguments could be made that we've heard tonight if those facilities were moving kind of anywhere, but they're not moving anywhere. They're moving into downtown, and frankly, if we don't do this, and I want us to, but if we don't, this may be like the elephant in the room, if we don't, then what happens with the malls? I think maybe Marjorie had mentioned. We're not going to have a whole lot of opportunities to take care of this, and this is an opportunity by these guys, which are very proven, obviously, and generous. They don't have to do this, obviously. So we've got an opportunity to save our downtown, and we've got a really, neat downtown. I've lived in a lot of different places over the years, and I was always kind of amazed that, I grew up downtown was cool. That was in the 70s, naturally, so it was a long time ago. Everything was cool in the 70s. But, so we've got this downtown. What is King Street, a kilometer long? It's not really big. So it's on a river. It's all there. The potential's all there, and I really think this is an opportunity not to be missed, because if we miss this, frankly, I don't think this opportunity is coming back. And to me, it's as much about saving our downtown, which is unsavable with the mall there. And I don't think these guys have twins that are going to come in and do this for us again. So, we've got this opportunity. I can understand their impatience, We've all been a little impatient with this. So I really think we've got the opportunity. We've got a cool little downtown. We can make this work. So I hope we support it. And I guess we'll find out shortly. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Before I pass it on to, back to Councillor B. McGregor and Councillor Finn for the final word, I just want to add a few things. As everyone knows, we're a growing community, and we're competing with 443 other municipalities for people. We can provide housing to them. We can provide a job. What they're looking for is those amenities that are over and above that. What are they going to do when they're not at home and we're not at the job? That's what we're working towards here. By putting the St. Clair Park in, we're giving them sports facilities. By doing this, we're creating a brand new museum, much larger than we have now. We're creating a new library. We're creating all that space. So for $6 million, we're creating a new library and a new museum. That to me is unfathomable in a good way, in that how do we ignore that? To say $6 million or thereabout to create two great facilities that people are going to serve to attract people and keep people here, to say, wow, did you see the new museum, the new library? If we renovate here, we spend $37 million, the public, what they will get is a council chambers down on the main floor, but there's not that excitement factor. I'm going to just touch on a few other points that haven't been made. There's been a lot of great points. Shared services is another one that we haven't talked about, but I look first at the council chambers. It won't be a council chambers, it will be a multi-purpose room that the library can use, the museum can use, or we will use it as a council chamber on Monday nights, whenever else we need it. But the library, if they want to do a show, put whatever on, they will have a room this size that they can do something with. The museum will have that, and it'll be right on site. We'll have a shared reception, so there'll be synergies that we're going to generate there. Security. We don't have security in this building right now, and I know the library, they have some security, but they want more. And the museum doesn't have security. By putting it under one roof, we'll be putting security. Every time there's an open hour to the public, there'll be security guards in there. So it'll be provide for that. Shared meeting rooms, shared various things like that, and will be attached to the mall as well, and downtown restaurants and those type of things. A couple other things, just on the quote, the 53 million that we have. I want to note that it was from last year, and that there's effectively, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, a 40% contingency in that number. There's a 20% for materials increases, and then a 20% for just general contingency.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. So the original 53 million came from our report of last August of 22. And it did include 30% actually. So it's 15 of straight contingency and another for escalation and labor. We did have another cost controller group that as part of the due diligence, review that quote, and that was just from May of this year. Now it acknowledged there's probably about a 15% increase in prices over that year, but we're still within like the 15 to 18 contingency range, even on that quote.
And that includes, well, the wall that we don't have to build. Anyway, so I want to put it in perspective. When we look around here, this room is, what, 2,200 square feet? So we're looking at providing the library a blank canvas 17 times the size of this room. This is my vision. I'll share my vision. The library in the lower floor, the museum in the upper, the civic center between the first and second floor, sharing it. So imagine the library, 35,000 square feet, all in one floor, easily accessible, and blank canvas. We're looking at hiring library expert to come in and say, how do we lay it out? I want an amazing facility that's going to, people when they walk into it say, wow, I'm proud to be in Chatham-Kent because of this facility. And it's not just about Chatham, it's about Chatham-Kent. People from all over Chatham-Kent will travel to that library, to the museum. It's going to highlight agriculture. It's going to do a number of things. We can't do that in the existing space. So when I look at that, and the museum's the same thing. We're going to have a blank canvas that we can start and create something amazing. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for $6 million to create this. I never dreamed that I could do that and say, we could do that and say, here, we're going to build a new museum, a new library for $6 million. So obviously I'm supporting it. With that, I'll pass it off to Councillor B. McGregor for final thoughts, and then over to Councillor Finn. Oh, sorry, Councillor Anderson, I'll go.
Just very quickly, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, and I've been going back and forth on this decision for a very long time, and it wasn't until sitting around here and listening to everything that everyone's saying that I did decide that I would chime in. And while I'm not from Chatham, I do understand the devastation of not having a downtown area, whether it was a sudden or a progressive loss. It is detrimental to have a vibrant downtown area for a community, and I see the opportunity that's presented here by the ability to rebuild, rebrand, revitalize, and, you know, make something that Chatham and Chatham-Kent as a whole can be really, really proud of. It's always difficult to take that leap and to say, are we doing the right thing, or are we not doing the right thing? And you look at cost, and you look at all these things, but I think that if we all put the positivity behind it of the opportunity that's presented to us, and if it's done in the proper way with including all of those key factors and key stakeholders that are going to be utilizing that space, this could really be a state-of-the-art building and facility, and something that will ultimately revitalize and bring so much opportunity to the rest of Chatham and Chatham-Kent. So I'll definitely be in favor of this tonight.
Councillor B. McGregor, then final thoughts from Councillor Finn.
Thank you, and certainly appreciate the conversation tonight. And I think, you know, Councillor Anderson said it well in acknowledging the opportunity for stakeholders to continue to be involved in this process. And I think about the feedback that we've already received, and you know, I'm reading an email from the museum board right now that recognizes their needs and their deficits and what they would like to see. And I think that that's you know, a fantastic opportunity that we have to look at those needs that are very real and have been existing for a long time. I know anyone who's done the tours of the museum or spends much time in the library, we know those facilities are extraordinarily well used. They've been a great benefit to our community. The programming is exceptional, and we have an opportunity for, you know, as Mayor Caniff has said, a net difference of $6 million to really improve the functionality of those services in our community and open up that availability to more and more people to access those services. So I think that we're faced with a very important decision, a great opportunity, and what has been a long time coming in renewing municipal assets in our community and renewing our downtown. Thank you.
Councillor Finn?
Being one who's brief on words, I don't think I could have added any more than what's already been said in the discussion tonight. It is a beautiful building, but we have a chance and an opportunity to make this city a one of a kind, something to be proud of, and to incorporate not 4 but 3 entities this time. And with the navigators at the library, wouldn't it be great that they have access to City Hall right upstairs instead of hoping that somebody will come down here to seek the help they need? So, like I said, I think if we don't, we will miss out on this opportunity.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail
Yes.
and Councillor Pinsino.
No.
All votes are in, and the motion passes 11-5. Moving on to 16C, motion of Councillor Doyle, re-incentive options for woodlot conservation.
Thank you, Judy.
Yes, over to you, Councillor Doyle. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas during the previous term of council, the Natural Heritage Committee of a whole received a report titled Public Consultation for Woodlot Preservation Options in March of 2022 that outlined a recommended process for additional public consultation, the various ways that the education, incentive, and regulation woodlot preservation tools might be configured, and a recommended configuration for each woodlot preservation tool to use as a bias for the proposed public consultation. And whereas whereas council passed a motion on September 25th, 2023 to repeal the temporary clear-cutting bylaw number 72 2021. Therefore, be it resolved that administration prepare an updated report for the March 4th, 2024 council meeting outlining the potential incentive options only, both to encourage the preservation of existing woodlots and to encourage the expansion of tree cover across the municipality. The report shall also propose options for further public consultation regarding the various incentive options.
Councillor Juvenville, you second that?
Yes, I will second that, and I would like to make a friendly amendment, if Councillor Doyle would accept it, that when the report returns to council, that administration considers the need for the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole and the potential to dissolve the committee, seen as it is no longer active. Thank you.
Councillor Doyle, you good with that?
Yeah, we had some discussion with Bruce and Ryan, and that seems to be kind of, if it's not no longer in use, then it's inactive, and they would need council's direction to dissolve it. So, but we also figured that it'd be good to wait until they go through with this report and then let them see if there's any other need for it before they come back to council in March. So I'm definitely good with that.
Okay, so it's, do you have anything else to add before I go to Councillor Juvenville? Then I got a couple other speakers as well.
I get to speak at the end, too?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll go back to the two of you as well at the end.
Okay, other people can talk first.
All right, Councillor Juvenville, you have anything to add before?
I have nothing else to add, Mayor. Thank
Okay.
you.
Councillor Harrigan, then Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I had some questions about already existing financial incentives that were in place for woodlots, and I guess this would be through to Bruce. And so my question is outside of the municipal programs that might be proposed in this report, are there already existing financial incentives that are in place for current owners of woodlots in Chatham-Kent?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, there's several provincial programs that have been in place for several years. And I'll start first with what they call the Farm Forestry Exemption Program. That program is the one that applies 100% property tax exemption for every 1 acre of forest for every 10 acres of farmland to a maximum of 30 acres per owner. So that program's been in place. We don't have participation data on that specific program because it's not shared by MPAC. However, automatic enrollment in that program means that all qualifying forested areas through Chatham-Kent are currently enrolled in the program. So it's a program run through MPAC. The second one is the Managed Forestry Tax Incentive Program that's been around for a while as well. So this is the program that applies 25% of the tax rate set for residential properties on forested lands if they're greater than 10 acres. Or more. And this is when the forest has been voluntarily classified by the landowner as a managed forest. So it's a provincially run program through MNRF. In total, Chatham-Kent has 36 properties and about 1,100 acres that are currently enrolled in this program. One of the things in this program, like as I mentioned, it offers 25% of the tax rate of residential. Which is actually 3% more than the current agricultural land tax, right? So that's one of the reasons maybe this program isn't as subscribed as others. And then there's also what they call the Conservation Lands Tax Incentive Program. So this applies 100% property tax exemption for portions of a property that feature one or more provincially significant natural features as defined. So that does include lands that are owned by individuals, but also includes conservation authorities and other not-for-profit organizations. At this point, we've had 8 properties, about 860 acres of wetlands, tallgrass prairie, combined forest in these programs. But they are actually all either through the CAs or other environmental conservation groups at this point in time. When we talk about incentives for expansion of tree cover, there's now the Alternative Land Use Services Program, what we call ALICE, that's now in place in Chatham-Kent. It's a nationally wide program that is funded by the feds, the province, and various donations to help fund that program. It has been in place for a few years now. It's managed by the Lower Thames Conservation Authority and very well subscribed to, as I understand it. It's a voluntary stewardship program. Without getting into all the specifics, it's one of the, the main recommendations that did come out of the 2014 Natural Heritage strategy was to establish an owls program here in Chatham-Kent. And also the other piece I would just highlight is, both conservation authorities have been running subsidized tree planting programs across the municipality for a number of years. So as we reported last year, between 2014 and 2021, the LTVCA had planted 547,000 trees across over 1,000 acres over that time frame. So those are the existing programs that are out there right now. When we did our best management review of these programs, no other municipalities were offering anything above and beyond these programs. There was no examples to be found out there of other tax incentive programs that would be municipally funded. So,
Great, thank you. And I may even offer the suggestion that no other municipalities are offering their own programs because the ones that you've outlined there are actually quite generous and also well used across the province. So there's really not that need to do that extra financial incentivizing. I just want to point to our 2014 Chatham-Kent Natural Heritage Implementation Strategy. Over the course of the committee of the whole discussions, both, this would largely be in the last term of council, but in some of the deputations we would have received in my absence, there's often reference to the Natural Heritage Implementation Strategy. And people, some stakeholders would make the argument, we don't need further regulation on trees because we have our Natural Heritage Implementation Strategy. So rather we should be turning towards that. Personally, as a councillor, I will not be supporting this motion because I feel as a councillor we should turn to the strategies that we already have in place. If we'd like to invest resources into moving in one direction or another, in this case it would be to preserve woodlots and tree coverage, then I would strongly suggest that we look to that 2014 strategy and look at ways that we can ask staff to report back on it or invest further into it. But I don't think kind of pulling out the one single suggestion of incentives and incentivizing, particularly financial incentives, is the way forward in this case. And certainly, I want to thank Councillor Doyle. He took a phone call today. We had a really good conversation about it. But for me personally, this is not the way forward. Thank you.
Councillor Pinsito, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
I think this is on the right track. We have to do something moving forward. Honestly, the whole municipality is involved in, some want to make sure that the tree cover remains there. And I think in order to do that, we have to incentivize it. I'm not in favor of dissolving the Natural Heritage Committee. As Councillor Harrigan said, it's important. And I think that work needs to go on. And I think we need to enhance it. But I am going to support this motion, but I would like to see the second paragraph voted on separately. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that Councillor Harrigan said. Throughout the council's 2018 and 2022 term, the trees of forests and woodlots obviously have come up very regularly and have been a focus of council's attention. During this time, council has passed several motions. We passed a motion regarding tree cover in Chatham-Kent, approved on November 4th, 2019. We passed a motion to develop and implement a tree cover policy approved on May 25th, 2020. We then passed a motion regarding woodlot preservation approved on April 26th, 2021. And then additional to that, we also approved a motion to include all the information related to the natural heritage file on the 2022 municipal election candidate page approved. I think that staff at this point, to yourself, Mr. McAllister, we've put hundreds of hours, staff hours into this. Would that be a fair assumption?
Thank you, Your Worship. That would be a fair assumption. There's a lot of work done in the last term of council on this. Yeah.
And I do think that, that we were I mean, this can be, this can be argued. We were 85 to 90% there, potentially coming up with a Chatham-Kent-based solution that could actually look at incentivizing or look at ways to recover funds to maybe purchase properties. Those are all suggestions that maybe could have come from the portion of continuing with the work that we were doing. I completely understand and respect the will of council. The will of council was to not proceed with some of those elements, and I do respect that. To yourself, Mr. Quinton, I had a list of these I printed out in regards to the Managed Forestry Tax Incentive Program, Conservative Lands Tax Incentive Program, Farm Forestry Exemption, which has been increased. Is that correct? This coming year for 2024, it's been increased a decent amount anyways for this?
Thank you through the mayor. Yes, the number of acres that each farmer was allowed to get the 100% exemption was increased to the 30 acres. I think it was for 2023, but maybe Bruce.
Yes, I think it was for 2023, because it was in our report from last March. It was already in there. It's probably been a year anyway, yeah.
As well as the ALICE program. Now, I recognize that none of these programs are municipal-based programs, but how would we, as a municipality, I understand this is just asking for a report, I won't be supporting this. Obviously, I recognize the importance of tree coverage, and a lot of these motions in here I've supported or brought forth myself. But when it comes to this, Mr. Quinton, how would we then, if we came up with an incentivized program, how would that program communicate with these programs that currently have? Like, would this be a very small task to do a one-off? And would this be something that you feel that, as a staff, that we could actually move forward with, just like this? That's a hard question, and it's subjective to that. I'm just curious on how this would look and how the assessments would go and who would qualify.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the notice of motion is asking for a report with incentive options, which we would develop for that report. But just as far as the data that we would use, it probably would be difficult to get. Either we're working through MPAC or through GIS methods. Like, it does get to be a very complex issue when you get into the weeds of it, because that current program is by ownership by farmer that has that 30 acre exemption. But the farm names, often it's numbered companies, who owns it is the same person. There all of a sudden would be quite a bit of administrative work. We'd have to decide whether it was an application-based program or are we going to roll out to everyone. So we would have to do the analysis for this report on how much additional staffing time would be needed to roll out any option that that would come back in this report. So I'll just end with there's no easy way to get to how many acres of forest a certain owner has, and to give, because they're already getting that 30 acres exempted, to do that calculation, it would be a very manual process.
So I did talk to Mr. Brown today in regards to the assessment aspect of forest lands in Chatham-Kent. Would you consider that a significant number, or would that number really be, a very minor number when it comes to the taxing that we are currently doing on manageable forests?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's the managed forest program that owners submit data through the province, and I think it's updated every 3 years. They have to resubmit their forest management plan. So that's already in place, run by the province, and then MPAC simply gives it the managed forest exemption. So there is a little work on our part to work with that. Anything to go farther than that would be extensive.
I'm scared to ask this question because I'm wondering what your answer is going to be. I feel that you're going to go, maybe if something like this would be suggested, where would the revenue source potentially, do you have some ideas where it might come from, or where you, as a CFO, would like to see it come from?
So, obviously, we have our budget sessions coming up, starting November 15th. So it could be funded from other taxpayers as part of a budget request. And I think you're alluding to the, we are giving a discount to the farm tax class of 3%. We're at the 22% taxes versus the 25% maximum prescribed by the province, and which is the case in 90+ percentage of other municipalities in Ontario. That could also be a source of funds if we were to raise that percentage up back to the 25%. That could be a potential source of funds. I'll note that council has directed us so far to wait till the next reassessment cycle, which now the province has canceled for the next few years, and we don't know when that's going to be put back in place.
Yeah, so just in closing, I like the objective and the optics of the motion, but I agree with Councillor Pinsino. I think that there is still some work that the Natural Heritage Committee has to do. I would much rather be making a data-driven decision based on all the elements and all the work that council, understanding that we decided that we didn't want to go down the regulation standpoint. I respect that. I respect the will of council, but I still think that there's a lot of components that we've worked at in the Natural Heritage Committee that we can utilize for making a data-driven decision and taking all that stuff that's already there instead of having a new report only focusing on one aspect of it. So I won't be supporting it, but do appreciate us reconvening and touching base on different programs that we can potentially do with the Natural Heritage Committee. Thank you.
Councillor Juvenville, then over to Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clear.
Sorry, Councillor McGrail's on the phone.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Councillor McGrail, you go first, and then over to Councillor Juvenville.
Thank you, Mayor Canna. So my question is, I'm confused that we could even dissolve the committee, because through this committee, we developed the natural heritage system that's required by the province. So could this committee be even resolved?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question there. It was hard to hear that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm confused in the fact that we're even having this conversation, because through this committee, and I'm looking at our terms, okay? It says development of the natural heritage system, which is required by the province. So can we even dissolve this committee?
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Well, the way I see it right now, the committee work was suspended by last term of council. We've had no direction to continue on with the Natural Heritage Committee of the whole process. I would suggest council seems to be taking on this issue here on the floor, and we're dealing with it as council, right? The Committee of the Whole was really established as a process where it still was all of council, but there were specific meetings and specific agenda topic items. But so unless we get some direction from council, I don't see there's anything that comes back to what was the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole. Certainly it could come back to council. With regard to that strategy, that was really to get some decision points as required by the province. When we get into the new official plan, there are provincial policy requirements that we're going to have to consider, and it'll be through a public process and here at council as well. So you don't have to do that through a natural committee of the whole to round this out. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to you, Councillor Juvenville, and then final by Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to reiterate basically what Bruce had just mentioned, because I did consult him. It appears that the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole is non-existent, so that's why I thought it's actually live and up and on the website, and it has the last term of council's names. So it's kind of redundant. I don't know that we need it anymore, so that's why I thought we should add it to the, to Councillor Doyle's motion. And as Bruce had mentioned, if we feel the need that we need to start the Natural Heritage Committee of the Whole again, if that is a need that we need to implement, then we can just start it up again. But as it is right now, we don't need that committee. That's how I take it, and I'm thinking that's what Bruce was trying to convey as well. So that's why, and this doesn't say that we're dissolving it tonight. It's stating that administration is going to come back with their suggestion of what to do with it. So we're not actually dissolving it. We're letting them dissolve it, or telling us, directing us at that time. Thank you.
Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to say a couple things here. So first, I'm definitely not asking them to go out and get any new reports. This is to go over the stuff that they've already done and look at the history that we already have with these conversations and bring us options out of that. So it's not asking them to go and have more public consultations right off the bat or anything. They basically take the information they have, they bring it back to us. Here's your options. Here's your cost. Do you want to do any of them? And then at that point, we can do a let's talk. We can go out to the farmer groups. We can go to the conservation authorities and see as well what their thoughts are. It was council's decision on September 25th that we wanted to repeal the bylaws. So council decided that we don't want to have regulations involved, but I think the mayor brought it up very nicely in the last one we did on September 25th when he talked about that, was that he said, it sounded like you agreed that the farmers should have the right to do what they want on their land, but at the same time, it'd be nice that they had incentive options to make them not want to chop down trees and not want to do that. And that's where I sit. I think they should have the right to do what they want on their land. It is their business. But if the municipality, and specifically our municipality, does not want them to take down trees, then our municipality should step up and put our money where our mouth is and say, hey, we're going to give you an incentive option from our municipality. I get that other municipalities don't do that. They might not have the same problem we do. So if that's our problem, unique to us, then we can make our own unique solution to it. So to have them bring us back options on March 4th with some ways to incentivize farmers to keep their woodlots, if that's what majority council wants, is to keep the woodlots, then I don't think that's a big issue. And then as well, to potentially work with the Lower Thames Conservation Authority and St. Clair and see if there's a better way that we can utilize the encouragement to plant trees, and maybe do something incentivized from the municipality at that point. Now we are doing what we say we want to do as a municipality, and the farmers that I've talked to a lot of farmers, and a lot of them, it's just on the morals. And if you don't want us to take down our woodlots, don't tax us on it, and I'm not going to even think about it. So that's kind of where I stand. Is I personally don't think we need to have the rules and regulations. If we've got a good incentive program, then they're not going to want to take down the trees in the first place. So that's all. Thank you very much.
See no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Pincinel?
We're just voting on this, what's on the screen right now, right?
Sorry, yes, we are voting on number 1 because we split the vote. So we are voting on number 1, which is Councillor Doyle's original motion.
And that is yes.
Thank you. And Councillor McGrail?
No.
Okay, so motion fails 4-13. Moving on to number 2, which is the friendly amendment that was added. Councillor McGrail?
No.
And Councillor Pincinel?
Nope.
All votes are in and motion fails 2-15.
We'll go to item 17, Health and Human Services.
17A, Employment Service Delivery.
Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Scotchy, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved, Mayor Caniff.
Seconded.
Councillor Harrigan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just a very quick question through you to Polly. My question is regarding the service delivery changes and the models. Will the general public see or notice a change in the public-facing services as a result of this delivery model? If no, that's great news, but if yes, how would this be communicated?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Councillor Harrigan, for the question. Both job seekers and employers will notice improved services, especially in our rural communities as a result of the changes. For example, in a number of our rural communities, currently there are no Employment Ontario providers, so that the public would be able to access those services through our municipal service centers and our municipal libraries if this was to move forward. And this would certainly be a benefit, I think, to not only our businesses, but our job seekers as well in those communities. And we would be communicating the news, the announcement of these services through media release and social media.
Wonderful, thank you. That's certainly welcome news for the rural communities. So no further questions, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question. It said the potential to earn an additional estimated $500,000 in performance-based funding. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit and what type of funding that would be for, or would it be going towards?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Mayor Caniff. The performance-based funding, so it is estimated, but when we secure an employment opportunity for a program participant, the longer they remain employed, there could be certain incentives. There's different streams of clients as well. For example, someone who's been unemployed for a longer period of time, there may be more incentive dollars that we could potentially receive if, say, at the 3-month point, they were still employed after accessing services. So currently, the program guidelines, when we receive that funding, we would have a range of options to be able to reinvest in our program, reinvest in employers, the job seekers. It's really a kind of no strings attached dollars that we'd be able to use.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Pinsino?
Yes.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in and motion passes 16-0.
Councillor, go ahead.
Corporate Services, 18B, previous council action items.
Councillor Harrigan.
So Mayor Caniff, I'd like to move the recommendations. I do have a request regarding one of the items in the appendices, though.
Councillor Jubin, will you second that?
Yes, I will second it.
Okay, Councillor Harrigan, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So certainly makes a lot of sense to kind of tidy up any loose action items from the previous council. I did have a request, I believe through the mayor, this would be for Bruce. One of the items in Appendix A on the chart does have my name tied to it regarding the mixed-use path on Erie Street South in Wheatley. So I would just like to make a request that that motion be shared with the Wheatley Task Force. So if they'd like to consider it in the development of downtown Wheatley, it's basically would allow for like a mixed-use kind of trail pathway to go from downtown Wheatley through to where the waterfront area is at the end of Erie Street South there. And I just don't want it to be kind of lost in the shuffle as we plan for what the future of Wheatley could be.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify, I think it's listed under Edwards area. It would be number 12 in the Appendix A. It's the Cross-Community Partnership for Mixed-Use Pathways, and it's currently listed under IES with a return date of October 2004. So I'm happy to add that to the chart so that staff can see that's a request of Councillor Harrigan's.
Which item was it? I lost it. 12. Sorry, I was getting confused with the task force one.
Sorry, Edward, were you going to respond to Councillor Harrigan?
Sorry, through the mayor to the councillor, the pathway that you are considering or identified here, we'll be looking at all of our pathways through our upcoming mobility transportation master plan, and we'll be sure to include that as part of our evaluation.
Wonderful, thank you.
Councillor Jubenville?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question about Appendix B, number 4, the establishment of it was the establishment of a Rural Economic Advisory Committee of Council, and now it's becoming an agricultural advisory committee. So is it basically, are you just renaming it? Is that essentially what's happening with this?
Thank you, Your Worship. So when this motion came forward last summer, it was a direction at council to wait till after the election and work through your strategic priorities. Through that process, there's specific initiative to establish an advisory agricultural committee as part of that process. So whether we call it rural, we can wordsmith the naming eventually, however we like, I guess, and come back to council. But our takeaway from that is we've reached out to a number of the different leaders of the agricultural groups, and I think we're trying to arrange a meeting and just to kind of talk through what makes sense for everybody, right? To make it a very efficient committee going forward. So then we'll come back to council. It'll probably be the new year because they asked that we wait till after harvest and have those discussions. So okay.
Okay, thank you.
Item 20, infrastructure and engineering Sorry. Oh. Let's put it up for vote now.
Councillor Pinsno
Yep.
and Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
And all votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Let's have a rewind. In number 20, infrastructure and engineering services.
20B, gravel road conversion prioritization framework.
This is an information report, and Councillor Sakatchi had a question. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Just actually a quick housekeeping question to Mr. Soldo. Edward, when it references like a further analysis that will be completed to assess the functions of the roads in that, and then it also refers to coming back to, the budget, the upcoming budget. Just a quick question in that regard. Is it going to essentially be like its own tab with the roads associated with the potential upgrade? And then I'm not sure if it's your team or working with Mr. Quinton's team, then going to come back if it's something that will be recommended or non-recommended, or is this something that's going to come in like the recommended side, or is it going to be like a nice to do thing? I'm just curious on how the budget's going to look that we're implementing this. I like how it's worded. I like how the report's drafted up. I just wanted to see if it's something, how it's going to be presented to us in the budget, since this is relatively new.
Sure, thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor, and Gordon can chime in as well. In terms of the capital budget, what we've done is we've put in a line item for this in the capital budget. When you see the capital budget this year, not to unwrap the president or anything, but it doesn't have a recommended and unrecommended. It's a 4-year capital budget. And in any given year, we're identifying the projects that we're recommending for council's consideration. So what we've done, I believe in here, we've identified in 25 and 27 that we've put a budget item for the conversion of roadways. Our goal is prior to 25, come back to council, having done the evaluation we identified through the framework here, and come up with a list of priority roadways that would be done in 25 and 27. So we still have work to do in terms of identifying which roadways they are through the process that we're going to be following. So what we're asking for tonight is approve the framework, and then we'll be reporting back on which roadways they are, but we won't be implementing anything till 25.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Doyle.
Thank you very much. It was just something Edward said that kind of tweaked my brain there. So would the only source of the funding for these roads we're going to identify be the $1 million in 2025 and the $1 million in 2027?
Through the mayor to the councillor, at the present time, that's what we've put in as placeholders. If council chooses to increase that or decrease that number, there's always that option through the budget process.
Okay. See, this is my area of confusion then, because I thought I read in the report that it cost about $700,000 to do a kilometer of road.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I would say that's an average, but depending on the condition of the roadway, is the base need improvement? Does there need to be drainage? So we've given you some average numbers. I would say in terms of your question there, where I believe you're going with this, this is a long-term plan. This isn't going to convert our gravel roads in the 5 to 10 years. I can tell you from experience in other municipalities that, you know, they put together a 25-year plan and slowly work towards that goal. And I don't believe that the goal of this conversion program is to convert all gravel roads either. It's those priority ones. There will always be gravel roads within the municipalities. It's identifying those that you know, are more of a priority based on the factors we've identified for you.
Right, okay, and I respect that, but at the same time, what we're saying is in 2025, we're going to do 1 kilometer of roads, and then in 2027, we're going to do another kilometer of roads. So I struggle with the how effective a plan this is going to be. So thank you.
Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Edward and the team for putting this together. It's started to put some numbers on the paper, and again, that's one of the things I was going to say that you just said is we're not trying to redo every gravel road here, but there's definitely some connector roads or roads that are quite a bit busier than like even say Dillon. There's not a lot of houses on it, but there's a lot of traffic on it, so there's never going to be a petition to put tar and chip on that road or to asphalt it because nobody lives there. So if we can prioritize some of the roads that do have a lot of traffic, that would be nice to turn to tar and chip or to asphalt, then I think it makes sense. And even if we do it very slowly, over time, we'll get it done. And in 25 years, we can look at it and say, hey, we did that.
Okay, that was an information report, so we can move on to the next one.
20D, Native Plant and Tree Nursery Project Update.
Councillor Harrigan, you had a question?
Less of a question, Mayor Kenneth, and really just kudos to Mike who wrote the report and also the staff team members who worked on this. I think this is a really great example of us putting our money where our mouth is and really demonstrating that as a community we are looking at investing in tree services. It was great to really read the dialogue in this report around the use of the former site kind of in the Fletcher area and what it looks like now and where we could go in the future. So there were really no financial implications, but you know, we talked about the good work of growing those native trees, which is something we all want to see more of in Chatham-Kent. So great work to the staff team who put that forward. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to notice of motion. So I've got three of them, Councillor C. McGregor, Councillor Crew, and then Councillor Wright. So Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. I, Councillor Carmen McGregor, bring forward the following motion for discussion and voting at the November 6, 2023 council meeting. Whereas the municipality of Chatham-Kent recently provided information to the Wallaceburg and District Horticultural Society regarding the Wallaceburg Museum and Vaughan Ayres Cultural Centre and Jeannie Gordon Theatre regarding new restrictions to be applied as a result of fire code and the information on a renewed lease. Each will create hardship and an inability to support the facility in Wallaceburg. Whereas museums, arts, culture, and performing arts are vital within our communities of Chatham-Kent and falls within our council's terms of priorities. Whereas and I'll put VACC, which is in my motion, but the Vaughan Ayres Cultural Centre and Jeannie Gordon Hall are housed above the Wallaceburg Museum and have been an integral part in the Wallaceburg community for social, educational, business, recreational, and entertainment engagements, including at one-time theatrical performances. Whereas the Vaughan Ayers Cultural Center and Jeannie Gordon Theatre originally hosted a stage of about 25.5 wide by 21.5 deep, with auditorium seating for up to 130 people, equipped with a 20-foot wide screen, sound and lighting booth, excellent acoustics, bar and refreshment area, and elevator for meeting accessibility requirements. Whereas the Wallaceburg Museum and the Vaughan Ayers Cultural Center are included as being an important part of the revitalization of the south side of Wallaceburg and are included within the Wallaceburg South Side Secondary Plan. And whereas a report as requested by Councillor Crew regarding museums will come to Council in November or December regarding the Buxton Museum, the Black Mecca Museum, and the Wallaceburg Museum to become more integrated under the municipal departments for resources, support, and funding purposes. So be it resolved, I, Councillor Carmen McGregor, make the following motion that administration prepare a report including funding options to present to Council that will identify the capital costs of restoration of the Vaughan Ayers Cultural Center and Jeannie Gordon Theatre to a state where it can once again provide the community with a venue for theatrical performances with identified maximum seating, and under the governance of the Wallaceburg Historical Society, help with the ability to keep the Vaughan Ayers Cultural Center and Jeannie Gordon Theatre financially viable. 2, staff be authorized to undertake a building condition assessment of the Vaughan Ayers Cultural Center and Jeannie Gordon Theatre, and that the funding for the assignment be funded through the Building Life Cycle Reserve. 3, the report includes an addendum that states past municipal practice of services and financial support with comparison to the language provided in the most recent and newly issued lease. And 4, that this information be provided to Council by March or in March of 2024. Thank you.
Sorry, your mic was off. Can you repeat that? Councillor Crew.
Thank you. I, Councillor Marjorie Crew, bring forward the following for discussion and voting on November the 6th. I forgot to write it in there, Judy. Whereas arts and culture and performing arts are vital within our communities of Chatham-Kent and falls within this council's term priorities, be it resolved that I, Councillor Marjorie Crew, make the following motion, that staff prepare a report to present to council for future renovations of the Chatham Cultural Center, including the Thames Art Gallery and Kiwanis Theatre seating and other capital enhancements, that this report be in consultation with related community and user groups. This report include estimated costs and funding sources, and this report be presented to council by March 2024.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, John Wright, will bring forward this motion for debate and vote at the next council meeting, whereas the Special Olympics Ontario School Championship Games will be hosted in Chatham-Kent over 3 days from 10th to 12th of June 24, and are dedicated to promoting respect, participant, inclusion, and human dignity for people with intellectual disabilities through sport. As whereas approximately 1,000 athletes, together with their coaches and families, are expected to arrive in Chatham-Kent in order to participate in sporting events held in Ridgetown, University of Guelph campus, the Chatham Thames campus, arenas and soccer fields and CKSS tracks, and enjoy all the Chatham-Kent has to offer as hosting this community on opening and closing the ceremonies. As where there's positive community economical impacts associated with hosting such an event, including making an important and significant contribution to the cementing Chatham-Kent status as a welcome community for all. Be it therefore resolved that council agreed to provide a range of supports consistent with these provide in other host communities, encompassing items such as facility rentals, shuttle buses, mobile stage, and marketing promotion to the Chatham-Kent Special Olympics Organization Committee to assist with hosting this event and showcase Chatham-Kent up to a maximum of $25,000 be funded from the Strategic Development Reserve.
Closed session reports. Councillor Crew and then Councillor Thompson, second those.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Council directed administration on litigation and advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege with regard to Jubenville versus Chatham-Kent, Section 239, 2E and F of the Municipal Act 2001. Proposed proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to Wheatley Road, community of Tilbury, Section 239, 2C of the Municipal Act 2001, and personal matters about an identifiable individual with regard to the appointment of Integrity Commission / closed meeting investigator, Section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001. Council received information on proposed acquisition of land, labor relations, or employee negotiations, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regards to the Fire Master Plan, Section 239 2C, D, and K of the Municipal Act 2001. I so move.
Seconded.
We'll put it to vote.
Councilor McGrail?
Yes.
Councilor Pincinel?
Yes.
Councilor Wright? Councilor Doyle? All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Approval of communication items. Councilor Story and Councilor Hall. Can I get you to move them, please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
So second.
We'll put it to vote. No? I should figure this out by now, really. Anyone opposed? Communication items carry. Non-agenda business. Michael.
Thank you, Your Worship. So members of council will hopefully recall that I sent an email earlier today just to let you know what's going on with this whole strong mayor legislation. We talked about this at council, I believe it was September 25th, and the direction was given to the mayor to send a letter to the province and advise the province that although we are very much interested in meeting our targets for housing and very much interested in participating, obviously, in the money that would hopefully come our way and the Building Faster Fund. There you go, BFF. The BFF means something else, but Building Faster Fund. But the letter was very clear, and you all have it in your package indicating that the mayor was not interested in strong mayor powers. So since that day, so that letter went out on the 28th, so the council meeting was the 25th, the letter went out on the 28th, all of you have a copy of the letter. We have still not received any formal response from the province. We did receive a letter from the province, and I included that in your package as well. And you'll notice it does not at all address the letter that we sent them. It does not, it just says that, you know, you're eligible for funding and what our targets are, that sort of thing. So I have had at least 3 or 4 communications. In fact, Mr. Taylor was involved in one of them with me where we had a meeting with some representatives from the province to see if we could get them to actually answer this question. The reason why I'm concerned about the date is because we're told that shortly after October 31st, which is tomorrow, they'll be I guess, introducing legislation. And as it stands right now, I think Chatham-Kent's name will be on that legislation as a municipality that is entitled to strong mayor powers because they have not answered our questions. So I want to make sure that council understands that. If you give direction to clearly say to council that we are not interested in the pledge, if it means that we're stuck with strong mayor powers, then unfortunately we'll have to take away our pledge. That's essentially one of your options, and I wrote that in the memo today. The other option is to accept strong mayor powers, in which case we would be able to continue to apply for the funding. And by the way, the funding, it's hard to calculate what the funding is going to be. The minimum amount, if we were to hit our targets, and we're quite confident we'll hit our targets, that's a report from planning for another day, but we're quite confident we'll hit our targets based on our history. We're looking at leaving around $330,000 minimum on the table. It could be more, but the province hasn't defined what happens if some of the other municipalities don't reach their target. Some municipalities have gone down the road of saying, okay, well, we'll take the strong mayor powers, we'll take the money if it comes our way, if we hit our targets, but the mayor is going to delegate their strong mayor powers. They can do that, and some mayors are preparing to delegate it. So some of those powers can be delegated to council, and other powers, as appropriate, can be delegated to staff. The challenge, and I said this, I think, clearly in the memo to you today, is the problem is the next mayor does not have to accept that delegation. So I just want to be clear about that. I know many of you expressed that you have no issues with Mayor Caniff, but it's the next mayor. Oh, by the way, if there forever there was a reason why you'd have an acting mayor for the balance of the term or something like that, that acting mayor does not get the powers. So I just wanted to let you know that. If some of you were looking at perhaps getting rid of Mr. Caniff here, Mayor Caniff, you would not be able to get the strong mayor powers if he didn't in fact receive them. So we really have, I think, two options tonight. I'll answer any questions you have, but I think we have two options. We either, as I said, accept the strong mayor powers and preserve Chatham-Kent's eligibility for the Building Faster Fund. We could explore delegating those powers, probably not tonight, but at a later date. Or we direct the mayor to send a letter to to the province, send a letter to the province immediately, withdrawing the commitment to the housing target. And I think that letter needs to be very clear that it's quite unfortunate because we think we can hit the target. We believe that, housing is important, but given that you've tied it to something like strong mayor, unfortunately, we're going to have to decline. So I know you gave direction to send a letter, which we've done, but nothing's come out of that. And I didn't want you to see the legislation and wonder, well, what the heck happened? We told you that we didn't want strong mayor powers, and the province has gone ahead and done it. So that's the quandary we're in. The staff that I'm speaking to at the province are struggling. They have a brand new minister, as you know. They just went through a ministerial change, quite a high-profile one. And I think they're just having difficulty getting direction. And you can see from the response that they wrote, they didn't even read our letter. Anybody could have read the letter and understood what our proposal was, and they didn't even address our letter, which is unfortunate. So Mayor, that's all I have to say, subject to any questions from...
Sorry, I just want to add something. We talked about, will we achieve our targets? We have already achieved them. There's a public website that goes and describes the 40-something that have the housing targets, and we're at 301% of our target this year. So, and I look, there's a lot of most municipalities are not meeting it. So there's probably about 6 that are meeting their target, 3 or 4 that are close, and the other 30-something are not meeting their target. Just put it in perspective, I wanted to send the link out, but that's just for your information.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, Mayor, so part of our challenge is the province has not told us what does that mean. So in other words, if the pot is only shared by the municipalities that hit their targets, do you get more? Or do you just get what your base amount is and then they put the money aside for subsequent years? We don't have an answer to that yet. They're still working through that themselves. That's why I said it's 330,000 at a minimum. It could be significantly more. We just don't know. So we need direction. We would have prepared a report, but I had a phone call with the province on Friday on this issue, still looking for a letter. I apologize for bringing it to you at the last minute. So we will need that's probably what the clerk wants to say, so I'll leave it to her.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now you have an update from the CAO, and if you'd like to discuss this tonight, because it wasn't on our agenda, procedurally, we have to get a 2/3 vote to allow us to discuss. So if we can do that first, and then if we receive a 2/3 vote, we can proceed with whatever motion council wants to put on the floor. If it fails, we just go away and we don't discuss it this evening. So if we can put that, just the motion to waive notice, and it requires a 2/3 vote.
All right, in favor of dealing with it tonight, put up your hand.
Councillor Pinsnow?
Yes.
Councillor McGrail? Thank you. We have received 2/3 and we can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. In the options that Michael had presented to us, it says, and at the bottom of number 1, council should be aware that this delegation could be withdrawn by any mayor in the future. Can this be withdrawn by our current mayor at the end of this term before our term ends? I think I made it very clear last time it wasn't Mayor Caniff and my confidence in him. It was the future of who future politicians might sit in that chair. So what your message says, the next mayor, whoever the mayor is, if it's not Mayor Caniff, could then withdraw or accept, but can, at any point during this term, we pull away, and could he do this before the end of his term, this term, which he could always reinitiate in another term?
Yeah, so, and
They might
I'll
by then.
defer to Mr. Taylor, but my view on it would be if there's a delegation of authority to council and to staff, then that's done by bylaw. And so the mayor would not have the authority to overturn that during that particular term. But what I would assume is that come the next term, then the request will go out yet again to the mayors, either returning mayors or new mayors from the province, and that's when the clock starts ticking again. Mr. Taylor, do you agree that it would be done by bylaw? He's shaking his head, so maybe he doesn't agree.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies for disagreeing with the CAO, but I believe that it certainly could, it depends on likely the wording of it. It certainly would not be delegated past the next term. So if there was a turnover of terms, it certainly would come back at that point. The mayor could take the powers back. There would have to be another delegation, but also it would depend on the language of it. It certainly could be withdrawn from my perspective. So it's no guarantee that it's going to last even that individual term.
And so this authority is for this term, mayors of this term only?
Yes,
So this is not gonna roll over?
correct.
You're guaranteeing that, right?
So I'm being asked for a quick on-the-fly
Yeah.
interpretation here. I don't want you to believe that this is a long-term delegation. I believe that at a minimum it would be the end of this
Well,
term.
and I can't support it if it rolls over, so.
Okay, if,
And like I said, I think I made it very clear, I have trust in our current mayor, but I don't have trust in the political system and who may win the next election and be in that seat, so.
yeah, so certainly if somebody else wins, they would not have to continue that delegation.
No, I know,
Yeah,
but would
but-
it automatically roll over to them? And they
Yes.
would have to turn it down?
So I can-
That's where what I want to know.
If you can give me 3 minutes while the rest of the discussion happens, I'll confirm my opinion.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Story, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I appreciate I feel like we've put a gun to our head with this one again, and not the CAO's fault by any stretch. I'm glad you reminded us, actually, because that would have been an interesting conversation next week. Have we had our MPP involved with this? We do have a provincial representative who should be able to bring forward our concerns at Queen's Park. How is that working out for us?
It's still, he can't get any answer. I mean, it's with the minister, and that's the issue we're dealing with, is that no one has the answers. I wish we had the answers. We could call up the MPP and say, and he'll tell you, yeah, it is, but they're still figuring it out.
Okay.
It's pretty ambiguous right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now, with so many questions, and I completely agree with Councillor Carmen McGregor's concerns. I agreed with them last time, and I agree with them tonight. Right now, based on, and I'm sure it's depending on how fast Dave can type into his mobile to get, but I would prefer to go with option 2 because there are way too many questions. The money, again, all the reasons we talked about last time, it is not a large amount of money, and I am thrilled that I'm looking at the chart right here, we're 301%. We're number 1 on that chart, which is great. If we are penalized for that, I think that is an entirely different discussion that we should be able to bring with our MPP to Queen's Park, and we should have a strong argument to still access that funding. So I think we have too many questions right now that we don't have answers to, and so I would support option 2, but I will not support option 1.
So going back, Councillor C. McGregor, do you want to put that as a motion? Of the 2? Option, whichever one it is, option 2. Do you want to move that?
I was kind of waiting for Mr. Taylor's
okay.
answer.
Mr. Taylor's been 2 minutes and
If he
48
doesn't
seconds.
provide
You
the
got 12
right one, I'd
seconds.
be happy to move it.
Anybody else want to make any, Councillor Doyle, while we're waiting?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just, again, don't have a good gut feeling about this. To me, when some of the mayor powers have to do with things that have nothing to do with housing, why would those things be included? To me, it's almost like a Trojan horse coming in to take some more democracy away from our municipal decision-making. So to me, I'd be supporting number 2 for sure. That's a small amount of money to give up some decision-making powers and some of our democracy.
Councillor Jubenville, followed by Councillor Sakachi, then Councillor Pincinel.
Thank you, Mayor. I do remember asking, but this might be a little bit different, asking if there was an expiration date on this, and Mr. Taylor did say there wasn't at the time, but things might have evolved a little bit since then, I don't know. So it's very open-ended, so I personally will go for option number 2, and again, that's no disrespect to our current mayor, it's just what sits best with me. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Pincinel.
Just seeing Mr. Dubin's mic light up, I didn't know if he had a comment to add first. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we're left to be making a challenging decision like this without consultation. I recognize that that's not our fault. I have a little bit of concerns in regards to number 1, but I also recognize that council as a whole didn't put yourself, Mayor Caniff, in the mayor's seat. I recognize that the public did. We often sit around the table and ask about funds and how to get more money from the province. There is the ability to get some here, and it's unfortunate that we're being left to make a hard decision. So I would support 1, recognizing the fact that being a mayor is a very challenging and difficult role, but that you've been put here by the public. So I will support number 1, recognizing that we're left to make a last-minute decision because we've received no response, which is extremely unfortunate.
Councillor Pincinel, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
And I do believe in you, Your Worship. I don't think you're going to do anything that's going to be, granted, that could happen down the road. However, I do think that any mayor that turns his whole council against him would be rather foolish as well to make a decision that's, especially a controversial one. I just hate to leave this money on the table, and I think I'm going to support option 1. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, you're back up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, my computer died during this interim period, so I'm trying to do it on my cell phone. So very quickly to Councillor McGregor's comment, I'm confident that the mayor can delegate it for this entire term. However, there's a section of the Municipal Act that says a delegation does not turn over to the next term. So you can't like pedal yourself into the next term. So it would not extend beyond that, but the mayor could write a delegation that clearly covers the rest of this term. Which is what the CIO said originally, yeah. But certainly, whether it's this mayor or another mayor into the next term, it would be back to the possibility of withdrawing that delegation.
So in other words, again, it would expire, would not carry into a next term. So this wouldn't be, it's kind of like a lot of our other motions that some things cannot carry on to the next term of council. This would be one of those, and then it would have to be revisited in the next term with whoever's in that seat, if that program went on and was to move forward.
Correct, yes.
Correct.
And then to Councillor Jubenville's question, which is along a similar vein, and that was whether the strong mayor powers will expire at some point in the future. And we have no indication that they would or wouldn't. We don't know whether the province is going to leave the strong mayor powers on while the priorities of housing are necessary and then take them off, or whether they're intending to continue them into the long term. So we have no real information on that.
Personally, it's not even just the housing incentives. I don't think the amount that we are going to be awarded is worth the delegation of that. There's a lot more to the strong mayor's powers than just, I know committees, but committees are already struck for the term. I would hope that you have a relationship with the CAO that you would not,
Send him packing.
Send Michael packing, because, you know, we kind of like him here. And, you know, like, things like that. So it's some of those other things that greatly concern me, but I feel a lot better knowing that it cannot roll over to the next term of council. And that either way would have to be, if it's still there, and that incentive would have to be revisited with the next term of council before that power was granted.
For clarification, what would not roll over is the
Right.
delegation, right?
The
It would go back to the mayor immediately.
Oh, sorry,
back
that
where?
changes it. I'll move option 2, thank you.
Okay, so you're gonna move option 2, and, sorry, who's over here that spoke? I think Councillor Story was the one that mentioned, seconded. All right, so that motion's on the floor. I've got 3 speakers. Councillor Harrigan?
Great, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. The question I have through you is to our CAO. And Michael, I'm just wondering, in conversations that you've had with other or have you had conversations with other municipalities that fall in this expanded category? Because as I understand it, the first wave didn't have a choice, right? Like, it was embedded into law that certain towns were under the Strong Mayors Act, and that's in provincial legislation. And it seems like we have a choice. Is that true? And have you had discussions with other CAOs about this?
Thank you, through you, your worship. That's right. So for the first round of municipalities, that was the first 29 municipalities. They were not required to give a housing pledge, that I recall, in exchange for the strong mayor powers. But for this group, yes, for some reason they've coupled them. So I don't feel like we have a choice either. But I think that's part of the problem, is that this group has been told that if the mayor wants strong mayor powers, then all you have to do is give a pledge. I will say that there's a mixed bag of municipalities out there. There are some municipalities who feel that, not a lot, but there are some municipalities that feel that the strong mayor powers is one of the tools that they need and actually have already used to support their housing objectives. Small group, but they do exist. There's other groups out there that have decided to go ahead and delegate it to, most of it to council, but a few of them to staff. And then there's others who are, and I don't know all the details of them, but I know there's others who are kind of in our position where, you know, they're interested in the pledge, they want to build homes, but they don't really want to go down the path of the strong mayor powers. So there's a mixed bag out there. I was telling the mayor that Caledon is one of those municipalities where immediately after, and Caledon was included in the first tranche, if I can call it. They were one of the original 29. The mayor immediately started using her strong mayor powers in Caledon, and I heard that from the CAO, who's no longer working in Caledon. So there's a whole mixed bag of how people are approaching it. But you are absolutely right that we were not part of the original group. We thought we were, and I would dare say that even the province thought we were, and then realized that no, just because we're members of OBCM didn't mean that we're actually one of those original 29.
Right, and I had read up on the provincial legislation prior to the announcement later on in the summer that there are also some council, like, veto checkback points, right? So if the mayor vetoes something, then council has the opportunity to bring it forward in a certain amount of times, not for everything in strong mayor powers, but there is that element of check and balance. Is that would apply to us as well, should we?
That's correct, and Mr. Taylor had provided, I believe, a memo to council about a month and a half ago with details on that. So while there is a mayor's, there are definitely mayor's powers, but there's also a check and balance in the sense that, for instance, you would need 2/3 of, a council can themselves veto a decision of the mayor with 2/3 of council. So there are some checks and balances. So it's not as if the mayor can just arbitrarily make a bunch of decisions on their own, but there are some decisions the mayor can make on their own. Or mayors can make on their own. So I would refer you back to Mr. Taylor's memo. We can get that to you.
Perfect. I'm sure I can dig it up. But the one comment that I will make, and I certainly appreciate the resistance that we have to the Strong Mayor Powers Act and how it does kind of take away local democracy. I think that that's important to advocate for that. I will also just caution us as a municipality that we still remain creatures of the province. We kind of are on a naughty versus nice list when it comes to the province and evaluating different applications, grants for funding. You don't really want to be the difficult child municipality. And so I do worry that if we take this stance and we say no because we say, no, this 330 is not that much, we're not going to trade strong mayor powers for that, that with the new changes in the ministry, that could put a bit of a label on the municipality of Chatham-Kent in maybe an area that we want to see some more provincial funding. So that's just the devil's advocate comment that I will make, that I think it's worth considering as we're deciding on option 1 or option 2.
Councillor B. McGregor, followed by Councillor Hall.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Harrigan. I think that, well, number one, I think it's no surprise the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing hasn't got back to us. I think they're dealing with a couple things right now, so I would imagine we won't hear back from them. I also think it's true that at any point they can just decide to hand these powers over as they already have. So we do run the risk of turning this down, as I think we should. I don't think they're a good option for municipalities. But at the same time, we may turn down some money and end up with them anyway in 2 years. So I think that's where I see the risk, is that, it's not an insubstantial amount of money. And we may end up having the powers in our municipality regardless of our decision. So I do think that it does make me pause and consider which option I would support, regardless of thinking that the powers are not something that belong in municipal politics, but recognizing that it may arrive at our door anyway.
Councillor Hall?
My question.
Sorry, Michael, did you want to
My question's been answered anyway.
Okay.
Well, and I don't want to presuppose what direction council is going to go, but I guess I'll make points on both of them real quickly. First of all, if you choose to go with option 2, that means we'd be telling the province, we're not interested in strong mayor powers, keep your money. That doesn't prevent us from continuing to lobby through our MPP, continuing to lobby and say, look, we're in this situation. We should be entitled to the money. We are helping you with your goals. So that's one side. I think the other side of it, though, is if you're interested in option 1, staff can come back to you with a report about what the delegation can look like. And what exactly that means. I know Councillor Harrigan asked a question, and I know when David Taylor sent the information, I don't know how closely everybody looked at it because we weren't really contemplating that at that time. But we could definitely come back with what the delegation would look like, what kinds of things we would recommend, subject to your direction, but what kind of things we would recommend be delegated back to council, and what kind of things can be delegated to staff. I can tell you right now that our recommendation on the staff side would be the same things that staff currently do today. We'd probably suggest they should continue to do. So normally you look to the CAO to make decisions about hiring and firing of your senior team, as opposed to the mayor. So I can assume that that's the type of thing we would bring forward. So I just want to point that out on both options. We can continue to advocate if you choose one way. As for the second one, we can bring back a report that gives you some details on what delegation would look like.
So I just want to add a little bit to the discussion, just add a little flavor to it. Right now, we're just saying, take it back, we don't want it. So we still haven't heard to say definitively, are they going to allow us to do this? To say, here, we'll accept the targets, because we've already achieved the targets this year. We're 300% of the target plus, and that's we still have time to go. And I fully anticipate that we're going to keep doing that for the next 3 years. So we're going to leave at least $1 million plus on the table, and depending on the formula. So may I suggest that that be the final one, but we go through a couple iterations and saying, would you consider the first doing this, what we've asked originally? If not, would you consider granting the powers just for the 3-year applicable, and I would delegate everything I possibly could to either council or I have no interest in them, but if we could limit it to the next 3 years, because they've allocated the 3-year target. So that'd be the next one. And then the final one to say, if neither one of these work, Mr. Premier, this is what we default to, because we don't want to go down that road. I just toss that out there because I really hate leaving $1 million, and it could be $2 million, $3 million, depending on how many. Like I look at Burlington, they only get 10% of their target for this year. So I look at a lot of the bigger ones, they're not coming close to their target. I just toss that out, food for thought, that, again, I understand that we don't want in the next election, whoever's there to have those, at least starting out. So I just toss that out for, yes, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. As far as what Brock said, this could maybe come down the pipeline later anyways. I think that maybe by saying we are so sure that we don't want strong mayor powers, that may set precedents too, that they're like, oh, you know what, we might as well not go down that road with Chatham-Kent anyways. Also, if we said, we do have the opportunity to say, we are meeting all of these targets. We don't need the strong mayor powers to meet these targets. The funding should automatically come to us. Without that, I don't think that it needs to be one without the other, and I don't understand how they're even synonymous with each other in the first place. So I think that going forward with option 2, and then saying, even if we need to add, but continue to lobby for this funding, if that's an option, then I'm happy to move that as a friendly amendment. But I think that if we just say we're not interested in strong mayor powers, as we've said from the very beginning, and carry on with that, that also sets our own precedence of what we want as a municipality and as a council.
Mayor Kenneth.
Just sorry, point of order, Mr. Mayor. I only wanted to speak as the seconder at the end. I didn't want to insert myself again. I just want to make sure, is that process still in place for this? Okay, then you can take me off the list till the end. Thank you.
Mayor Kenneth, just building on Councillor Anderson's comments, I've sent Judy a friendly amendment text message and just kind of shared it with the mover across from me here, that administration send a letter to the province reaffirming its commitment to the housing target, noting that we will not be extending strong mayor powers in Chatham-Kent. So saying that we are committed to the housing, we'll take the money for the housing, but that we're not extending strong mayor powers, and see where that gets us.
And we could argue the first, we've already achieved it. So without the powers, we've already got 300% of the housing target. So can we get 1 year anyway? Who knows? But
So if, I don't know, Judy, if
sorry,
you're able
going
to
to the
put that
mover, are you good with that amendment? Councillor Story, are you good with the amendment?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jubenville?
I like the amendment. I'm just concerned because what if they misconstrue it? Like they've kind of ignored what we've already sent to them. So how can we be confident that they aren't going to confuse it or misconstrue it? Like, do we have to put a lot of spaces between the two paragraphs, or I'm paranoid, that's all.
To you, your worship, what we will do is we'll send it to everybody. We'll send it to our MPP. We'll send it to the Premier's office. We'll absolutely send it to the new minister. We can use larger font. I don't know, but I can't guarantee that they won't do what they're going to do, but it won't be for lack of effort on our part to try to get the message through. So, okay, sorry, it's getting late. So.
Sorry, any other, before I go back to the, have we got that amendment? Councillor Sagachi?
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Just in reference to this one there, I respect everybody's opinion and I don't disagree with anything, but we are approaching a 3-year budget here, and $1 million in 3 years. We're going to be, anticipating some very challenging times. It'd just be unfortunate that, I'm sure we could word it a way that unless we're maybe something stating only if it's absolutely mandatory, we will accept it. I'm okay with that. I can't support this because I know how hard it is to find $1 million in a budget. And in a 3-year budget that we're going to be at 8 to 10, I've seen some municipalities at 15%, 14%, 13%. I recognize everybody's concerns. I just wish there was a better way to do it. And that's a lot of money to leave on the table when we're going to be hitting some really challenging times where everybody's going to be looking at each individual councilor's projects and motions and areas to find small cuts. And then we'll think about this time where we decided to not move forward with something potentially to save, I get it. I just want to recognize 3 years at $338,000 is a lot of money when we're talking about a very challenging time in our budget. Thank you.
Are you comfortable then with the motion that's up there, the mover and the seconder? Okay. Sorry, yeah, because that was kind of confusing here. We're saying two things here. Okay. Councilor McGrail.
Thank you. So my question, I'm just thinking about, lobbying and that. Is there an opportunity us through the Roma conference to have a delegation with the minister? And that's in January here, so it's not a lengthy time away. Have we applied for that, or is there an opportunity that we can take advantage there?
Through your worship, sure, there's an opportunity. I think Roma's the 21st to 23rd of January in Toronto. I would suggest to you that it'll be too late because they will have already amended their legislation. However, if option 2 gets approved, like I said, there's always opportunities for ongoing lobbying. So I wouldn't wait until January. I would probably seek a meeting sooner than that. But if we can't get one, then it would certainly be something we may want to apply for a delegation for Roma, and maybe even beyond in AMO in August.
Great, thank you.
Okay, back to the, who was the mover and seconder? I apologize. So I'll go to you, Councillor Story, and then over to Councillor C. McGregor, and then we'll vote.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and I really appreciate all the comments tonight on such short notice. It's a great discussion. I have, through my FCM network, I've talked to a lot of Ontario municipalities in our Ontario caucus, and they have shared a lot of the same concerns as we've had, and they have also actually been inspired by what Chatham-Kent did and have often followed our lead to do the same. And I think in that approach, the more municipalities that work together to share the same message, the province has reversed their decisions before. And I think we can't obviously assume that, but we can certainly possibly entertain that if enough municipalities share their concerns, that could be reversed. We still don't exactly know when we're getting any money. We don't know exactly how much. We don't even know if. These are all fairly, it's been fairly loosey-goosey, for lack of a technical term. And a quick question to Gord. I am loath to turn down any money either, to Councillor Sakatchi's point. I completely accept that position and respect it. If we did not receive $300,000 this year, what would that impact our taxes? How would that impact our taxes?
This side just asked me the same question here.
Oh, nice. Great minds think alike.
0.17%.
Pardon me?
0.17%.
Thank you. All I would add for my point is that, to me, it's a question about how much do we think our democracy is worth? Is it worth $338,000? Is it worth $1 million? To me, there's not a price we can put on it. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke with the Director of Legal Services. We have just a small concern with the wording in this last half where it says, noting that we will not be extending strong mayor powers. It's the province that extends it. So could we change extending to accepting? We will not be accepting the strong mayor powers? Thank you.
I would just like to add in something, I think, just say we should put in there something on the letter saying, given that we've already achieved our target, something along that line, that wording in the letter saying we obviously don't need strong mayor powers to get there. And something along that line just to flavor it up there rather than just saying this, but given that we are committed to the housing target, but we will not be accepting.
It will be in the letter. I don't think it needs to be.
Yeah, no, it doesn't mean there, but just to emphasize that, hey, we're one of the four or five municipalities that have actually met the target of the 40-something. All right, final words by Councillor C. McGregor, and we'll put it to vote.
Thank you, and thank you for the amendments, and Councillor Story for asking the question that I just sent a message to Gord Quinton about. So I don't think there needs to be much more said, and I think we should just let's take it to the democratic process, and this council will make a decision.
Okay, we'll put it to vote. Michael, do you have a comment before we vote?
Well, yeah, it's too late now. Councillor Doyle was commenting that the first motion made reference to withdrawing the commitment to the housing target. This is quite different because it says that we are reaffirming its commitment to the housing target. So you just want to point that out, right?
Yeah, that's all I want to say. Like the one we originally voted on. The one we originally voted on said that we are withdrawing the commitment to the housing target on the basis that strong mayor powers not be extended to Chatham-Kent. And this one says we're sending a letter reaffirming its commitment to the housing target, noting that we will not be accepting mayor powers. So and that to me is what we sent the first time.
I will say that ultimately, I don't think the letter will look any different. With all due respect, I think the point is we're going to say to the province, look, we don't want strong mayor powers. Unfortunately, we've already hit our target. We are still committed to building homes in Chatham-Kent, and we're going to continue to do so because those are the needs of our people. But given that you have coupled the two things together, we're going to have to formally withdraw our pledge if that's tied to, or given that that's tied to the strong mayor power. So you're right, it's worded differently, but I don't think that it changed the gist of the letter at all.
Okay, I just want to make that clear. Thanks.
Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
And Councillor Pincino?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-1.
Any other non-agenda business? Councillor Story, Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I apologize. I just had a snack. I know there was some news in the media this week about the cyber attack that affected the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance and a variety of healthcare organizations in the region. It sounds quite serious and concerning for a lot of reasons. Have we been able to extend any assistance to them or any updates to them that we can provide assistance? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, we were made aware of it last week, and once I was made aware, one of the first things I did is I offered our assistance to the CEO for the hospital. She hasn't taken me up on that offer. When we say it was a couple of different hospitals, I just want to point out that those hospitals all use the same provider. So it was the one provider that was impacted, and that provider provides services to all the hospitals. I do, however, know that there's been some impact to our paramedic services, and if I can, I'd like to ask Chief Case to just briefly talk about that, because he's been watching it closely because it has impacted our response times.
Thank you, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So as of last Monday, paramedic services were made aware. It impacted a number of services that had a knock-on effect on paramedics, on offloads. We had a brief code black last Monday when it first happened for about 10 minutes. The team who are here tonight put in place additional paramedics for the offload team. That's paramedics in the hospital, and they've staffed up additional ambulances. And I'm pleased to say so far the system has coped well because of the close work that's going on between EMS and the hospital. But they are still having some difficulties, and I get a briefing every morning about what's going on, and I can tell you the team are working around the clock on it right now.
May I ask a question? What's a code black?
Code black is where we have no available ambulances for a period of time.
And that was a result of that cyber attack?
I couldn't give that precise, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I couldn't give that precise answer, but there was a number of offload delays whilst it happened.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can, Mr. Mayor, just one more thing to that question. I know that our IT department, I'm not going to say this publicly, I'm not going to say much more publicly, but I can tell you that our IT department is fully aware. And I think they've been in touch with the hospital's IT department as well. And we have taken some steps internally, as you could expect us we would. So I'll leave it at that, but we're very much engaged in this.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Kennett. Just with this week being my first back on council, I was reviewing some of the previous agendas in the fall especially, and I noticed that our strategic plan was passed in consent while I was away. And I just wanted to bring it out in non-agenda this week because I really do think that our strat plan is such an important document and have been really pleased to see how already the briefing notes coming to council are connected to our strategic plan and the work that staff's doing. I'm wondering if it can be shared with council how it is that we're showcasing this plan and where people in our community can access it outside of that council report, and then how council might expect updates on it in the future.
Thank you. Through your worship, Mr. Labadie is our manager of corporate communications. He's here, so if I can ask Eric to come on up and give you an answer to that question. While he's walking up here, you may have noted in your council reports that we always make reference to the strategic priorities. We have changed the icons actually recently to reflect the fact that we have a new set of strategic priorities. We're still having some debate over one of the icons, so it may change again. But other than that, we will continue to always make reference in our reports about where we're at. And some of you may recall, Councillor Harrigan, you may not know this, but I'm committed to every 6 months providing a report on how are we doing with respect to our council reports, our notices of motions as they relate to the council strategic priorities. So we still have one more to do, which is on the old council strategic priorities. And then obviously we'll get into a cycle on the new one early next year. So Mr. Labadie, if you can perhaps address the question.
Sure, through you, Mayor. Welcome back. It's my first time at the podium, so thank you. So where to find the term priorities? They are currently on the homepage. We added them today, bottom left-hand or bottom right-hand corner of the homepage. We've also added them to the council meeting page right at the very top above the calendar. And then they're also under local government and then plans and studies. A little bit harder to find, but they're there as well. But mainly the homepage is the easiest way to find in Chatham-Kent.ca. In terms of what we're going to be doing to give them a little bit more exposure, we have a plan once we kind of are fully staffed up in corporate communications. We are going to do a kind of a longer drawn out campaign where we pull out some of the priorities and showcase them in action in the community. So how these priorities are actually being actioned within the community by staff, by administration, and by council. So that's a plan. So we'll be in touch about that going forward.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And as you were replying, Councillor C. McGregor reminded me that the very handy placemat that we have is with the old council priorities. So if we could get a new one for us to just be constantly reminded about our strat plan, that would be wonderful too. Thank you.
Sure. Through Mayor, we've already created one. We've kind of been working on one particular sticky icon. So once that's confirmed, we'll get those printed out and added around the table.
Wonderful, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to give condolences to the hockey community, specifically the Wheatley Olmsted Sharks and the Lessard family for the sudden loss of Sylvain Lessard on his way home from hockey practice 5 days ago. Anytime that there's the loss of a young life with so much potential, it's really important that we acknowledge that loss and also come together as a community, whether it's the hockey community, the family community, or the brotherhood that's brought between hockey players, that we acknowledge that and give our condolences to the Lessard family and the hockey community as a whole.
Okay, seeing no other non-agenda business, the first and second reading, Councillor Pinson and Councillor C. McGregor, can you move that, please?
Happy to second.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading, Councillor B. McGregor and Councillor McGrail.
So moved.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. The resolution of council, Councillor Crew and Councillor Harrigan, you get to wrap this one up.
I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, November 6, 2023, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. I so move.
And I will second.
Anyone opposed to adjourning at 9:06? Seeing none, have a great night.